Okay, we're going to get started. Welcome to Charter Township of Plymouth Board of Trustees Special Meeting Study Session for Tuesday, January 15th, 2019. Mr. Clerk, please take the roll.
Trustee Kermy.
Here.
Trustee Dempsey.
Present.
Clerk Borba here. Trustee Heitman.
Here.
Trustee Borchevitz.
Here.
Treasurer Clinton.
Here.
Supervisor Heisey.
Here.
All present. We have a quorum.
Tonight, and then next is approval of tonight's agenda. Is there a motion?
Mr. Supervisor,
Mr. Heitman.
I move we approve the agenda as written.
Motion to approve by Mr. Heitman. Is there a second?
Second.
By Clerk Vorba. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Next is public comments and questions. Any comments or questions at this time? Limited to 3 minutes. There'll be another opportunity at the end of the meeting. Okay, hearing none. We're going to move on to new business. So before we get started, I just want to say again, this is a study session tonight. That's why we're all wearing sweaters. Mr. Kermy, Mr. Dempsey, myself, Mr. Vorba, Mr. Heitman. So, you know, you're still in golf mode here, Mark, and Bob is the only guy who really works for a living around here. So he just came right from work. So that's why he's still dressed up like a lawyer. So we're a little bit more casual here tonight, both in dress and hopefully just in discussion, because we are focused on goals and objectives, and just to discuss those goals and objectives for the new year. But before we do that, we would like to have an update on the golf course management contract. As you know, we agreed to begin contract negotiations with ADM LLC for the management of Hilltop Golf Course. We have had a contract that's been passed back and forth several times. The latest actually, the latest iteration is being worked on right now, obviously, but you do have a copy in front of you that was provided, I believe, to you all. Was that last night? Was that, or Sunday night? Yesterday night? One was emailed to you as well?
Yes.
Was that your last night?
Same thing, it's just showing it.
It's the one. It's the marked up version. Yeah.
We have two versions.
So it's the marked up version that was emailed to you last night. So there was a plain copy of the new version, then a marked up version, and then that's the one I believe Sandy made copies of. Okay, so you should have copies of that. Okay, good. So we got copies of both of those. We have been working with Tony Mosconi, who is here tonight, with some of his team. Tony's lawyer, Kevin Bennett, our attorney, to finalize the terms and conditions of the proposed agreement, and basically it just lays out the terms of the contract, the method of payment, the management agreement itself. Kevin, I don't know if you want to take it from there, and then maybe we can ask some questions either of you or of Tony. The game plan also is that this document would be on your agenda for the 22nd, next Tuesday.
So what do we do with comments, or how, because we don't want to really do that publicly, right, or feedback?
Well, I mean, I guess you got to use your discretion as to what do you think would be appropriate for the public or not at this point. You know, legal analysis is going to be legal analysis, and we're not really giving away any trade secrets here or anything, to the best of my knowledge. So, Kevin, why don't you just get us started?
Okay, just a couple of comments on the key provisions of the contract. What it calls for is a base management fee of $70,000 that will go up every year by the CPI, or 3%, whichever is less. The term of the contract is 4.5 years, or a little over 4.5 years, from whenever the township enters the contract to December of 2023. One component of the contract that the board needs to be aware of is that there is an automatic renewal provision that is solely the choice of the contractor, not the township. If the contractor complies with all the provisions of the contract, then it has the sole option to renew the contract for another 5 years, without township consent. The latest version of the contract has been changed since this afternoon. I've been in contact with AVM's attorney, and I requested some changes, and he has complied with my request. Specifically, I asked him to change Section 6, which allows township residents to use the park for skiing in the winter. This could be problematic for tax purposes under the General Property Tax Act. What the General Property Tax Act says is that if a park is to remain owned by the township and tax exempt, it has to be open to the public in general, not just to township residents. If it was open just to township residents, the park could lose its tax exempt status. I also added, with respect, these are minor changes, with respect to 6G, with respect to marketing materials, we just wanted to make sure that there would be no objectionable or offensive marketing materials or signage at or on behalf of the golf course. So we cleaned that up to include both of those. Under statute, the most interest the township can pay is 8% per annum. Currently, the judgment rate is far lower than that, but it's conceivable, and in the past, the judgment rate has been higher than 8%. So I asked the attorney for the contractor to put a cap on the interest rate of 8%, and he's done that. The most important provision was in 19E. They had a provision in 19E that called for the township to indemnify and hold harmless the contractor with respect to environmental matters. The township does not have the power to indemnify any third party, so I asked that that be changed. Initially, they changed it. They left the hold harmless provision in there, but the spirit of the language that was in that paragraph still reflected indemnification. I asked them to, what hold harmless means under the law is a distinct concept from indemnification. Hold harmless means to release. So what the township can do is release AMV from any environmental liability that they do not cause. That means the township can't pursue any cases against AMV for environmental hazards that they don't cause. And that's perfectly acceptable from a legal standpoint. If, with respect to discussion of this, I'm willing to answer questions now, or if a trustee wants to contact me personally by way of phone call or email or personal meeting, that's fine too. I'll leave it up to each one of your individual discretions.
Let me just ask a quick question. On page 3, the term of agreement, we have, I guess there's, you have March 31st, 2019 as the effective date. I thought we were looking at February 15th.
That's what I was thinking too. I think when you and I and Mark Clinton met with Mr. Moscone, we notified them that the Billy Casper contract doesn't expire until March 31st, 2019. It doesn't mean we can't enter into this contract before then. It would just could present some awkward situations, conceivably.
Well, it would be our intent to, that the parties would, all three parties would be working in an amicable and professional manner to effectuate a smooth transition.
That would be ideal.
We did, Kurt and I had a conference call today with the folks from Billy Casper Golf, and they were receptive to officially canceling the contract as of February 28th. And we said that we would make them whole for the month of March. We would pay their management fee and pay the salaries of those folks who are on our full-time on the payroll. But I think, you know, especially now when you're dealing in these months, January, February, March, when there's not any golf going on, it's very important to get the new management team in there so they can prepare for the upcoming season, particularly with leagues and outings and marketing. So really the sooner the better. So if we can, and I think it's probably important that we have at least a couple weeks of overlap so there can be a transition of inventory, equipment, procedures, et cetera. Billy Casper was very receptive, very professional in terms of working with the new management team to make that happen.
That's good to hear. We can always change the effective date of the contract.
Okay, Bob.
So I don't, I'm not in favor of automatic renewals. I think they got 5 years is a long time to begin with, and then, you know, that binds a future board that I don't think we ought to be doing, regardless of who may or may not be on the board 5 years from now, it should be reviewed. I'm really, second thing is I'm really curious about this formation of a subsidiary because I don't know why they would need to do that. I think that would possibly enable them if they decided that it wasn't financially viable, they could just bankrupt the subsidiary and close it down and walk away from it.
There is a provision in the contract. I'm trying to find it right now. Oh, here it is. It's in paragraph 4.
Yeah.
It states that for operating purposes, when they form the subsidiary, if you look at the last sentence, it states that AMV acknowledges and agrees that the formation shall not relieve AMV of any of its duties, obligations, or responsibilities. And I did bring that point up when we had our meeting. Why do you need a subsidiary?
Yeah.
And the answer was, and Mr. Moscone can correct me if I'm wrong, I think what he said was that AMV is going, or AMV is going to be the parent company, and they may pursue other subsidiaries owned by AMV, and then they could just keep AMV as a parent company and have subsidiaries for their different projects. And that's not an unusual way to do business.
Bob, Billy Casper did the exact same thing. They had Billy Casper Golf. Each course that they managed was set up as a separate subsidiary.
So they could limit liability that way too.
Yeah.
Let's go back to the timing that you talked about for renewal.
Help me out here where it says the 120-day provision, page 3, paragraph 3 towards the bottom. Maybe I don't understand what it means, but it says, unless notification is provided to the township, that's their notification.
Yes,
They would have to notify us, but we would have
No recourse on our own.
that's how I interpret the contract.
And why is it this way? Can't we negotiate that?
Yes, you can negotiate it.
Everything is negotiable.
All right. Well, that's one item that needs to be worked on.
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't think an automatic renewal is in the public interest. I also have a concern about the length of the contract at 5 years. Not that they don't seem to be reputable and good performing, but it's a long term to go with without much of a track record here. And I also wonder if we're adding comments and concerns about how does this contract factor in the issue of the master plan? I'm not sure about that. If it goes to a 9-hole course, does this contract permit that? If it does, that's great. I just don't know. I can't really figure that out.
We've had that discussion with Tony, and the plan would be that if at the end of 5 years, we would, and this does assume joint severability, okay? So we would have to have the right to terminate this contract as well at the end of 5 years. And that at the end of 5 years, then the township could decide whether or not to pursue the 9-hole option.
So we'd have to wait 5 years before
Yes.
we did that?
Yeah, because they have to have time to get this course up and running the way we like it. And I think 5 years is a reasonable time for a new, we know that they know how to operate a golf course. They have a track record of operating a similar course. I think 5 years is adequate to allow them the time that they need to make the investment of capital, of equipment, personnel, to make our course viable.
But their investment in capital is only the first 20,000, right? And then after that, it's the township.
At our discretion, if we choose to.
Right.
But they're going to be moving in their own carts. They're bringing in a lot of their own equipment for mowing purposes and whatnot.
They're
So
providing carts?
they have surplus carts from the other course that's being closed. So they're going to be bringing in some of their own carts as well.
How old are they, do you know?
I don't know, but
They're electric, which they're going to test them out, is what he said when he was here last time, to see if some of the younger electrics will survive the hills, because their cattails is flat. Is that right?
Yeah, Tony, you may want to jump in here about the equipment, because I'm not sure you committed to bringing over carts and equipment. Yeah.
Yellow. With regards to carts specifically, yes, we have carts at Cattails. If they don't happen to work at Hilltop, we can rent carts just like everybody else, and that's our expense. That'll be part of our operating expense. And I think typically there's 70, 75 carts on the golf course for play. So I think we have 55 at Hilltop, so we'll just rent the extra 15 to 20, just in case ours don't work. But that's our expense.
But you could sell the carts, the excess carts you have as an investment.
Yeah, we'll see what happens with Cattails here in
No, I
this
mean,
year. but-
ultimately.
Correct,
Yeah.
correct. And then also keep in mind, at the golf course, we have a full-fledged of maintenance equipment. We have the golf carts, we have restaurant, I mean, we have a whole bunch of stuff that someday we sell that golf course. That'll be available to us to use at our discretion, whether or not we bring over extra aerators, extra blowers, extra things to help ramp up Hilltop even more.
So in that vein, then we're trying to make this agreement so that it is flexible enough so that we can have some creativity on their part and move towards profitability as quickly as possible. I'm not smart enough to know how to write it up that way, but we've got to have some flex so that people can use good business judgment without having their hands tied up all the time or requiring major meetings and discussions to get through a hump. So, but I have some other things that are we going to go by rotation or?
Well, let's just, Bob, are you set for now?
Yeah, we can, keep it informal.
We'll just go around the horn here.
I'm sure I'll have more.
Gary, Jerry?
I only had a couple things since I keep bringing up Groupons anyway. We do have a Groupon for soccer at the golf course.
For what?
For
I mean,
soccer.
foot golf.
Foot golf, yeah. That has not been turned on yet, and there are, if we get rid of that off Groupon, that'll save us, if we're still going to do foot golf at the course. And the present Groupon is $47.50 for 2 people with carts. That can be turned on, but it can also be taken away at a 90-day discretion through Groupon. So
The Groupon situation is something that we've spent a great deal of time on. And we've talked this over with Tony and with Billy Casper. Casper has sent us a list of the individuals who purchased Groupon certificates or in some cases, it looks to me, we just got the graph today, it looks like some of them have been redeemed, but it also looks like a list of just people who bought them. I can't tell you for sure. All I will do is just counsel the board tonight that the Groupon certificates represent a liability to the township.
yes.
We acknowledge that. Tony acknowledges that. Billy Casper does as well. It is not our intention to issue Groupon certificates from this day forward.
Correct.
We are, the 3 parties, though, are committed to resolving the liability issues associated with Groupon. We recognize that we're probably still going to have to carry some liability, but really at this point, we don't want to get into how much that's going to be or what, or we recognize that we're going to have to carry that liability.
But it could be small.
So how many?
It could be small.
Rough order of magnitude. I mean, is it 10, 100? Oh, you don't want to.
I really don't want to get into that at this time because it represents a financial liability to the township, and I don't want that to be taken advantage of.
Well, then we should shut the Groupon words that are still out there this morning.
Well,
It still says,
on their website,
yeah,
yeah.
Still buying?
you can still buy them if you bought one. You can buy 2 more. That's also out there.
Okay.
So,
All right.
so
We have instructed Billy Casper to stop selling them. So right now,
Wait 5 minutes.
yeah, exactly. Thanks.
but we still got to change the words.
We agree, but
Okay.
this is like literally 4 hours ago. So we are trying
Okay.
to effectuate that change. They're actually going to turn over the domain name, assuming this contract is approved and everything. They're going to turn over the domain name to Mosconi's group. And I'm sure that'll be the first thing that would be deleted if it hasn't been deleted already. I hope it has. But we
Okay, you're on
recognize
top
that
of it,
that's
huh?
going to be an issue that we're going to have to confront in the first year. The good news is, I believe after the first year of operation, then all of that will be exhausted.
Okay, good.
Jerry Vorva?
I just, I'm so sorry,
Yeah.
On that Groupon, I would just call, we don't want to create bad will.
Nor do we. And we looked at certain options. One was like just a cold turkey option and just say, sorry, we're under new management, you lose. We didn't want to do that. And the compromise was that we would honor the Groupon certificates through the end of 2019. Okay, that was kind of a fair compromise. Use it or lose it. We also understand now, we found out earlier today that I think 120 days is you said 90, I've been told it's 120 days is when the Groupons expire. Okay? And then after that, there still may be a liability to the township, but we are not sure as of now what that might represent.
There's
I mean,
both
having
days
said all that,
are
I
out.
don't think, we're not talking about a lot of these things. I don't know how many we're talking about, but I'm not overly concerned about it.
We should buy them.
So anything, Jerry?
Yeah, no, some of my issues have already been addressed by other people, the renewal, and I'm fine.
Okay, Mark, anything different?
Just, no, I'm happy with the progress that was made today from both a business and a legal perspective. I think we're getting pretty close on this thing. I personally am not concerned about a 5-year contract. With respect to the master plan about developing a 9-hole course, a lot of this was predicated on the fact that we were losing money. And
yeah.
we wanted to stop losing money, and we were looking for options to stop losing money. My recommendation here is I don't think that the master plan is dead by any means. I think there's a lot of good things that we can, and a master plan doesn't mean we're going to do it in 2 years or 3 years. It's a vision that may be out there in 10 or 20 years. It'll be a living and breathing type of master plan. But I think we've got to give this new management team the opportunity to see if we can turn this thing around from a financial standpoint. We could possibly, very possibly make money on an 18-hole course rather than go with a plan to turn it into a 9-hole course. So that's why I'm comfortable with the 5-year initial term, and why I'm comfortable with shelving the master plan, put it on a shelf and continue to work on it for 4 to 5 years. I'm not as comfortable with an automatic renewal. I think I'd like to continue to negotiate that with the folks there.
Yeah. The way it was with Casper was we could give them 120 days notice of termination. At the end of the term. Okay, so it wasn't like at will. It was still within the 120 days of contract expiration. Right, Kevin?
The way it is currently is that it will automatically renew unless AMV notifies the township within 120 days of the expiration date that it will not renew.
We understand that, but I'm just, maybe you want to look at the language from the Casper contract is all I'm saying.
So the renewal provision would be mutual.
Correct.
That's what the Casper contract says, yes.
I have one thought, though, on that with regards to the renewal. What if we show over that 5-year term that out of those 5 years, for instance, 3 years we generated profit and we were able to split that profit? Would that be maybe a way to factor in an auto renewal that sort of put the proof in the pudding that we can make this work? Is that a thought?
It's an incentive.
I don't, I mean, if you're performing, and I don't know why it would be necessary to have an auto renewal, because if you're performing and the then current township board is happy with the performance, then it'll be a slam dunk anyway.
I'm just trying to remove that risk of a new group, that comes in at 5 years. If this is sort of kicked in, the group, is in the record that we were able to generate some positive profits there for 3 years.
Yeah.
Maybe that was a thought.
The other side of that is that, in a general sense, you always make decisions that extend, but this would actually extend. We would be making a decision that would bind potentially
But if you had a mutually, if you had contract, if we had the ability to terminate the contract at the end of the term, you'd be okay with that, Bob?
I would say that, I mean, the expectation would be, we'll have some annual review, right? They'll come in, they'll do presentation, annual review of that. And the expectation would be that when it gets into the, approaching the 5 years, at that point, if things are going well, it's unlikely that then current board will say, oh, we need to throw this all out for bid again. I mean, it's that auto renewal, and that really kind of troubles me. And maybe there's a way that it could be structured so that the future board would have the option to explore other opportunities if they chose to.
It would be complicated. I don't know what it would look like, but to borrow from what Tony has indicated, if we could have like measurables in year 3 and 4 and something like that, that gets really complicated though.
The only, just to talk both sides of my mind.
Yeah.
The negative from my is, God bless, what if we're just doing fantastic in the 5th year, this new board comes in and said, geez, these guys have already got it in place. We don't need them. We'll just hire a pro and do it ourselves.
Well, that's their discretion.
I know. That's what I'm trying to.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll save that one for Kevin and Kyle. Let the attorneys panel that
Switch
one out.
seats.
But I mean that's also the risk that you have when dealing with a public entity too.
Sure.
I mean,
I understand.
it's not like the private sector where we can do kind of more of what where we would have more flexibility. In the public sector, the public demands accountability, and so we would have to have that in the contract. I don't think that's a deal breaker. I think what you do is look at the Billy Casper language.
Yeah, because in that case, if the Billy Casper language forced this board to review it, if it had not been in there, it would have just kept automatic renewing and, we'd be there. Could possibly.
Okay. Jack?
I guess I'd want to ask Mr. Bennett, what did the RFP say about the term of the contract that we were looking for a bid on?
I don't know. I did not draft the RFP.
I think it was 5 and 5.
But it didn't call for 5 with an automatic 5 renewal.
No, it was open-ended, I think.
Yeah, very open.
In other words, be creative is what you asked, right?
So I still have a concern about the length of the contract and certainly the automatic renewal. And I guess I'd like to ask Mr. Moscone if in 2 years this is losing money, are you objecting to the idea of converting this to a 9-hole if you would agree that this would turn it into a profitable enterprise?
I think that's what we sort of bring to the table is keep in mind we've operated Cattail since we built it in 1991, so there's 27 years there, plus we own Total Sports. So if that master plan were to come to fruition, who not than us, where we have experience on both sides, the athletic field side and the golf side. So no, I'm not against that at all. I think at that time you'd have to relook at the agreement because it's a great idea, it's a great concept. They have it up north in the Forest Dunes, but here in Southeast Michigan it'd be brand new. So as far as like from my for-profit side, taking that risk, that's something that we'd have to work together on and figure that out. I think it's a great idea.
So you're amenable to language in this agreement that would say it'd be a mutual discussion and agreement to that effect, rather than saying this is on the shelf for up to 20 years. It seems to me that that's in our interest and your interest to have language in here that says both sides have a duty to negotiate in good faith if we want to look at the master plan and implement it. And I don't hear you objecting to that.
No, I think we touched on it when we met. We just weren't sure how to put it into the agreement, and we thought, all reality's sake, it's probably going to be, out there and maybe
Makes sense,
the 5-year bridge.
It would have to be a reopener of some kind, and you'd have to negotiate
We
all over again.
have, I mean, it's weak, but at the bottom of page 7, we have owners meeting that they shall periodically consult with the township regarding golf course operations, et cetera. We could put a vague sentence in there that would say, including but not limited to future golf course services or operations. I mean, we agree to talk about it, basically. I just don't think it's fair to, because remember, if you go back to the RFPs were for an 18-hole course. They were not for a 9-hole. And I made that very clear when we had the interviews, that I specifically said we were not here to buffalo you guys or change the terms and conditions that radically. I guess we're open to some suggestions, but I don't want to do anything that would cause them concern, to think that we're somehow going to invoke some clause that would trigger a complete reconfiguration of their business plan, of their operations and everything. I mean, we might as well fire them at that point. I mean, and I wouldn't want to, but that's a radical change to go from
That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about some kind of language that would say there'd be a mutual obligation to discuss this and see if we have a mutual satisfactory outcome on implementing some of that master plan, the 9-hole, whatever. I'm sure there can be language drafted that's not offensive to either party, that isn't weak. It's a little stronger, but it doesn't, like you say, Mr. Supervisor, it doesn't stick them with the problem. I'm not looking to that. I'm trying to create more flexibility here.
Okay.
So
That's the key word, is flexibility. If things change, to be able to adapt to the change. And I don't know how you do that. What we're trying to do is predict the future. So I agree that we're...
in reality, when you look at that plan, you're talking about millions of dollars worth of investment and time and loss of revenue in the golf course while you're changing it over. What is the real likelihood? It's a nice plan. It's pretty. It's got all kinds of positives to it. But in reality, it would cost a ton of money to do that. And we're not in a position to do it. We could put the language in there, but I can tell you right now, it's not going to happen in the next 2 years, and it's more than likely not going to happen in the next 5 years.
well, that's a new piece of information to me.
But I think we can work on language. How about Kevin and I can work on some language? We did have this discussion at the table. We did talk about this prospect. And I think basically what we said was, at the end of 5 years, we'd both be free to make that decision. Enabling you sufficient time to prove yourself that we can actually break even or maybe even make a profit at Hilltop, which really is what we'd like to see.
So let's get back to just a couple of things. I have a bunch of questions and what ifs, and you guys know. There is a well and a pump out there. If that well needs service or has a failure or the pump motor burns out, who's paying for it? And is it on the expense list, or is it going to be on the capital list? And is it in here somehow, the mechanism? Help me out.
Can you look at Exhibit E near the back?
Okay.
Tony and I were talking about this exact same thing, and my general question was, what's the difference between a capital expenditure and an operating expenditure? Exhibit E.
Parking lot.
Oh, sorry, it was an F with an underline. Looks a lot like an E. F. So
Double underlined F.
in general, all capital expenditures would be the obligation of Plymouth Township. All operating expenses would be the obligation of AMV. And so Tony put together this exhibit just to give examples of, how to better clarify the difference between an operating expense and a capital expense.
Okay, so here's pump house, says township. What does that mean? Under B, irrigation, pump house, the last one. That's what I'm talking about. It's the pump house.
Mm-hmm.
So it says township. So there's a $3,000 bill to fix it. Does that mean we share it like it says at the top, or it's 100% the township?
In that case, that'd be 100% the township.
Okay, wanted to understand that. Let's go to another simple one. The air conditioning in the clubhouse. Maintenance, AMV, replace. All right, so if you get a $1,000 bill at the clubhouse, it's AMV?
For the repair, yes. That's something I might bring the cart and say, hey, a brand new air conditioner is $1,500. Do you want us to spend $1,000 to fix it? Or should we look at, those are some of the gray areas we'll have to work.
I look at an air conditioner system or HVAC system as more of a fixture in the building, and that would be, if we own the building, then we should own the fixtures. If you want to, if you want to buy a weed whacker because the old one broke down, I mean, I guess that would be your weed whacker, yeah.
Okay, now let's go to the force majeure. If that happens, does the management fee, is there a refund of some of the management fee to the township? Or do they get to keep the $70,000? We're paying the $70,000 in a lump sum, is that correct?
Yes.
Upfront. All right. Do they, if force majeure, number 16, I think it is, if that gets force majeure, if we have a tornado that just rips everything up, is there a refund of the management, a prorated refund? Maybe this is not a good idea, I don't know, but I just wanted to bring it up.
I'm going to let Kevin handle that one.
There's not a provision in here for any refund.
All right.
I mean, remember, they're standing in our shoes in the management of this course. We're hiring them to do something that we can't do. If we were doing it on our own, there was a force majeure incident, we would assume that risk and absorb that loss.
All right, so the management fee is paid up front. So in order for us, because I know I said we want to reduce our losses by 50%, maybe we can, so if they break even, we still pay 70%. So there has to be a profit of $140,000 for us to be at net zero. So we would take the $140,000 and split it, and that $70,000 would cover our $70,000 management fee. Is that Mark?
No.
Is that what will have to happen?
Correct.
No, I think what the township pays the 70,000 and gross profits or net profits after the annual revenues are added up, revenues and expenditures. If there is a net profit, that is split equally between the township and the contractor.
Isn't that what Mark's?
So there has to be a profit of 140,000 to break even.
Because 50% of the profit benefit would go to the operator, and the other 50% would go to us, and that would net us to zero, would offset the 70,000 management fee.
Correct.
I understand.
Ambitious.
It's a lot better than we've been doing.
Yeah. Well, what was the operating loss in 2018?
We haven't gotten the final numbers yet, but it will be in the neighborhood, and don't quote me on this, somewhere between 90 and 100
That's with depreciation or without?
without depreciation. That's pure operating expense or operating. Yeah.
One thing I didn't mention before is that the most the township can lose is the $70,000 base management fee. However, if the township board wants to invest in capital expenditures for the golf course, the township board has the power to do that. That expense would be borne by the township, but it's strictly a township board call whether or not you do that.
But at some level, I mean, you can't just let everything fall into disrepair. Something has to be, you're going to need a new roof at some point and this and that.
No matter who manages it.
Doesn't matter.
Sure. But then you're talking a pure business decision with a ROI, and it's very easy for us to look at it and say, okay, this is what we're going to get out of our investment.
It's ambitious.
Okay.
That's a $250,000 turnaround.
How do you figure that?
140 to break even, in the 100 loss.
Yeah.
From this year, so it's a $250,000 turnaround they'd have to do.
Take it in steps.
Well, there's a couple Are we going to get there? I don't know. But just a couple thoughts. We do roughly 25,000 rounds a year. That's $10 a round, and you break even. Now, are we going to charge $10 more a round? Probably not. Are we going to charge $5? Probably. So we just cut that in half. I think Billy Casper is a little heavy in terms of their full-time employees, what we've been paying them in terms of expenses, and they don't have the opportunity to do economies of scale like these folks do at Cattails. When you're buying stuff, buy twice as much, get the economies of scale. So I'm confident the revenues are going to go up and the expenses are going to go down. Is it going to be $250,000? I don't know. But our maximum exposure under this contract is a $70,000 loss.
Yeah, so there's a cap on it. I guess, Mark, Billy Casper is a national company. They have more buying leverage than A&V.
But not down the road. Not right down the road.
All right.
In terms of capital investment?
Well, they're operating somebody in Canton and Troy, right?
Yeah.
I don't think they've ever, well, anyway, they're big enough that they don't necessarily have the vested interest maybe that these guys would have.
Correct. With our local vendors, I think we can help out with that on the golf course supply side. And then also keep in mind the equipment. You know, we have our own air raiders and blowers and things that are specialty use that we utilize at Cattails that we can bring over and use it at Hilltop. So that avoids the capital expense of Hilltop purchasing an air raider, for instance, or a top dresser.
Well, the present system, the fertilizer and weed killer bills are paid through our payables department.
But we'll take care of that going forward.
Right. That way.
No, we're open. We have indoor golf. So No, we're open for 2019.
Depends on the housing market probably and interest rates.
Things are in process. We're open.
But we also understand that, for example, Woodland Meadows, I believe Woodland Meadows is closing now. That's the golf course in Van Buren Township where the big landfill is on 275 on the east side. That's Van Buren Township. Woodland Meadows is owned by Waste Management, and that was designed for future expansion for the existing landfill. So they plan on closing Woodland Meadows. It's closed. It's closed. And then they're going to be expanding that landfill into the existing golf course because Waste Management owns the whole thing.
All right. So it was a good
So
placekeeper.
yeah, and so what's nice is obviously we're all going to be scrambling for those customers.
Right.
I heard that you and I were planning on selling this golf course here.
Fake news. Fake news. All right, now, obviously, this is coming back to the board for next Tuesday. I cannot guarantee that every exhibit is going to be finalized. We did get the legal description of the land, which is handy, but we still have to go through the equipment list, and that will require an on-site visit of some sort by all parties. So I can't guarantee that those exhibits are all going to be totally finalized by next Tuesday, but the basics of the contract would be. So any other questions for Mr. Moscone at this point?
Did I read someplace that the discount for Plymouth Township residents was 10%?
Yes, it's in there.
Okay, today, it's $5, so it's out of a $23 base, 18 holes. Basically, you're saving, yeah, almost 30%. And even if you're playing 18, it's even, or playing 9 or night, it's that $5 versus 18. So it's an even bigger number. It's over 30% then.
I like the 10%. It's easy math.
10% of what is the question? I mean, because they charge different rates based upon different hours of the day, different days of the week. So a $5, I wasn't even aware that there was a $5 discount.
So we either pay $18 for 9-hole or twilight, or $23 for during the day, which is why the Groupon of $46,
So that's
including
a
a
set,
cart,
that's a set price for a Plymouth Township resident, any day of the week, any hour of the day?
$18 or $13.
You could go out there on a Monday afternoon and, as a non-resident, and play for $15. So
There you
it might not even be a discount.
Yeah.
I mean, with this dynamic flexible pricing is relatively new, but to me, it makes more sense to give a percentage discount of the dynamic flexible pricing rather than a set discount.
So whose responsibility is it to update the website?
Yeah.
You guys handle that too? Okay, which is pretty clear as to who pays what when. So we definitely got to take care of that as quickly as possible as well.
Yep.
There's a variable pricing model, so depending on demand,
Mhm.
prices may rise or fall.
Yeah.
Yep, you're right.
So
That's
on a
just
sunny
what we
day,
do
the
golf
prices
now.
go up. On a cold day, the prices go down.
It's incredible. Yeah, in 30 years, it's changed. Before, foursome, everybody would make the call, and now you go to Golf Now. That's what we utilize, and it actually has a little bit of AI behind it. And if it sees the tee sheets full and there's only a few tee times left, it goes to your max rate, which we can set what the max rate is, minimum rate, discount, all that kind of stuff.
So
We can set that up.
people are
Perfect.
incentivized to book early.
Yeah.
Okay, any questions from the audience? All right. Yeah, okay. You got to come up.
I'm Andy Malm. I'm on the golf course commission with the other guys. I did ask Kurt a question earlier. I do play in your indoor golf league on the simulators, and it's fantastic. With a couple of other guys from Plymouth, we think it'd be a real hit down here. Is there any plans to potentially get some wintertime revenue going as well? Yeah, the clubhouse looks small to me compared to what you have in Cattails. But again, I think it's a potential wintertime revenue. That's one question. And then I did go out with Paul, our golf course designer, last fall, and he noticed there are a lot of pine trees on Hilltop that really aren't trimmed low. And he said, when your ball goes in there, it's like hitting it in the water. So is that an expense to maybe clean up some of that on your end, or is that the township, or? Yep. And then a popular hole to complain about, I think it's number 6. It's very sloped. And people, it's just unfair. You can't keep the ball on the green.
That's Hilltop.
And
That's number 4.
Paul was saying, well, you can manage that with letting the grass grow a little longer. And you guys are the experts, but just those kind of things, getting some of those trees, to restore it back to a more playable course.
sorry, I can't do anything about it.
That's all I had.
Okay.
So will that tree trimming and maintenance be an expense paid by ADM?
Estimate of how much that is. And the way I have the agreement in, hopefully you can see it from your end and from our end, we're going to try to do what we can do to improve the golf course in order to justify higher revenues to make us all hopefully whole. So as long as it's within reason, we're going to try to do what we can in-house, A, to knock it out ASAP, but B, just to help out the whole P&L. And if
So
it
we-
needs to be an obnoxious number that there's 30 trees to be taken out or something, we'll present that, but we'll work together on that. As I said, at the end of the day, at the very bottom there, net profit, it's split 50-50. And some of the work that we can do, obviously is going to help us initially, but some of the work is going to stay with the property forever.
So the low hanging branches, your crews might do themselves. All right, so I understand.
Okay, why don't we wrap up this discussion? Thank you very much for being out here. Thanks
you,
for
guys.
coming. We'll be in touch tomorrow and get this done.
Good job.
Thanks. All right, we're now going to move on to discussion of township goals for 2019. Again, this is a very informal discussion. There's no particular order or anything. I have categorized these into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 separate categories. If you look at what the city of Plymouth does, this is very similar to the goal setting chart that they put together, and they bring in a consultant, and they spend a whole Saturday sitting around with the consultant going through charrettes and putting things on bulletin boards and stuff. I'm trying to, save some money and also streamline the process here a little bit. So this is just some ideas that I've put together along with, we've gotten some input from Chuck and Mark and Jack and Jerry. So I don't have everybody's initials next to all these things, but if you see something there that looks familiar that you want to explain in more detail, then feel free. So I'm just going to kick things off by talking about the first item, which is public safety, which includes police, fire, dispatch, and other of the traditional public safety services. One of the things we've talked about is a 10-year capital improvement plan for police and fire in light of the millage approval. That is something that the chiefs are working on. I wanted to get that done or submitted to the board by March. Is that still doable? Okay. Apply for new NFPA insurance rating. That is something that the chief is going to be working on. Again, in light of the successful millage passage and the new equipment and personnel that we have, if the chief could just give us a quick synopsis of what that entails and what the potential savings might be to residents. Does your mic work?
Yes, it does. It's actually ISO rating, Public Protection Classification Rating. The ISO is the Insurance Service Offices, and they rate three main components of a municipality's fire suppression activities. They rate the communication system, they rate the water system, and they rate the fire department. And based on that rating, insurance rates are set. During our last ISO rating, which was conducted in 2013, 2014, we dropped considerably from almost a 3, and in this classification, the lower the number, the better. We dropped from a 3 to a 6. We're also a community that has what's called a split classification. The east side of our community and the west side have slightly different, the water system at the time was slightly different, so it was rated differently. Now, to give you an idea of communities, in the United States, there are only 329 Class 1 communities. That's not many. The vast majority are 4, 5, and 6. All of our contemporaries surrounding us, with the exception of Canton, because Canton, like us, has a west side where they have no water supply at all. They're about a 6 as well, but Livonia, Northville, Plymouth City, and Northville City are all class 3 or 4, which is better than us, and we can do much better. As a matter of fact, we were much better before the cuts to public safety that happened several years ago.
So the game plan would be by going to a lower number, because it's kind of counterintuitive, but to go to a lower number, what could result in a reduction in savings on your house insurance.
Yes, not only home insurance, but also we have a large industrial base, and it would benefit that large industrial base as well in their insurance rates, which could be considerably
Okay, so
higher
a
than home.
$700 annual premium, what would you expect the improvement to be?
I couldn't answer that by the change in classification right now. I could look into that, but I couldn't answer it right now.
And I think it would also depend on your insurance carrier as well. I mean, you're going to get different
Some
rates.
insurance carriers subscribe to the ISO. Some insurance carriers have a different system. They decided that they didn't want to pay for the service, so they created their own. So
really, well, also what ISO also is like, sort of like best practices and other things. It's more than just people and equipment.
it is. It's best practices. It is how is your service running? How has your service's performance been in the past, which would reflect how it will be in the future.
Okay, good. That's good enough for tonight, I think. Shared services, police services with the City of Plymouth. I know this is something that Jerry has talked about in the past. He still is going to continue to talk about it. I think right now, it's a good goal. I don't know what it would look like right now. It might be helpful someday to maybe at least have a shared command system that would handle both communities. But we have not even had these discussions with the city at all. So it's out there just sort of as a...
So why is it a good goal?
Well, it's something to think about. Good goal. I mean, it's a good goal. You're saving money. You're sharing services. That's
10 or 20 years?
10 or 20, if we can afford it, yeah. We're going to work on a plan. But anyway, that's still out there. Future of emergency transport. This is going to be discussed in great detail in a few weeks on February 12th. This just is the whole future of emergency transport in the township. Do we do it alone? Do we stick with the current plan, or do we develop some kind of a hybrid system?
Isn't the
So
current
when you
plan the
say it's gonna
hybrid?
be discussed, what do you mean by that?
Discussed, and I would like to, I'm going to make a policy recommendation on February 12th.
Which is?
You're going to have to wait.
Well, we're not going to have a work session on it?
We can,
And this is very strategic.
we can talk about it that night, sure. I mean, we don't have to make a decision that night, but we got to get the ball rolling, and I don't want to do it tonight. I mean, that we'll blow the rest of the meeting just on that. We don't have all the data yet.
Remember,
Got to make a decision at some point. I mean, what do you want to do?
well, you could do nothing for a while. We've been
yeah.
doing,
That's a decision, though.
right. For 30 years, we've been doing the same thing. So, all right. But
Doesn't make it right.
right. Well, remember, completed staff work, bring data, credible data, organized presentation, no hand waving.
Okay. All right. Update criminal codes. We're kind of doing that right now. So mission accomplished. We're working on that. Same thing with marijuana. These were all still things that were still in flux a couple months ago. So those are definitely underway. Jack, I think the compliance with Michigan fireworks laws is yours. Just want to quickly explain that one. Just make sure that we do it.
Well, Mr. Bennett probably can too if he's looked into it, but apparently the legislature in lame duck and the governor signed into law changes to the fireworks statute. So
I think it does. It provides municipalities with more control than the current scheme.
So we should take advantage of that control.
MTA is not a ton of work. I mean, they know what they're doing on that. So they can be a consultative resource.
But we don't have to amend any ordinances or anything.
We might.
There is currently a fireworks ordinance that's patterned after the current state law. Whether or not the board wants to amend that, of course, is a discretionary consideration for the board. What I could do is prepare a memorandum of what the new statutory scheme allows municipalities to do and circulate that to the board so the board can make its informed decision.
Okay.
If I could
Yeah.
add something to this. I know we have down in the number 2 infrastructure, it says create a separate building maintenance fund for public safety, general government, DPW. I just think that we pass this millage and that some of that millage money should be used and set aside for building maintenance and future repairs. Some of the money should come from there, not just from the general fund. And so because it was for public safety, we have separate buildings for fire. We have a building that's quasi-separate in that they have their own HVA and other systems for the police department. That some of the money that we receive from that millage should be set aside for the same type of thing we're talking about in number 2, and that is a building maintenance fund. That's where some of that money should come from.
Which member?
The one we just passed.
Public safety.
So what I'm saying is,
I thought we told the public we were going to use that to pay down legacy costs.
yeah, but it
And a
also
lot of
said-
other
it also
things,
said
a lot of other
facilities.
things, Bob,
It
too.
also said facilities too. What I'm saying is that some of that money shouldn't just go for just the normal things.
So-
They have facilities.
So I have the actual handout. I'm not sure who did this. Friends of Plymouth Township. It says on there, improving our police, fire, and dispatch facilities. Is
Yes.
this what you're talking about,
That's what I'm
Mr.
talking
Vorba?
Yeah.
So does it say anything in there about hiring more firefighters so they can do the transports?
No,
No.
we're not
Obvious
talking
that
about
we're-
that right
Let's talk
now.
about that.
I think you're mixing apples and oranges.
Okay.
So because that's what we talked about, I just want to make sure that some of that money for those facilities comes from that millage and not just from the general
So you're
fund.
saying if
Well-
we need a new roof on a fire station?
It should come from that, some of it should come from there.
Okay, I see.
What I'm saying is, okay, go ahead, Jack.
There is an item on here. Quote, "The township will achieve recommended staffing levels for police and fire for the first time in years," unquote.
Yeah.
Recommended by whom?
By the chiefs. They did that at a public meeting on more than one occasion. I would also reference you to the document that the township put out regarding the millage. So, okay then.
One thing
Yeah,
that
Mark?
I'd like to add to the public safety list is I know we've talked a lot about the difficulties that both chiefs are having in not only recruiting but retaining the resources that we have. I would like to suggest that we spend some time designing and implementing an employee recruitment and retention program. I don't know what it's going to look like, but I think we ought to make that one of our goals is to recruit and retain, do a better job of recruiting and retaining our public safety officials.
Do we presently use our HR outsourced
No.
company? I mean, they do that, obviously.
I'm not sure if it would be that obvious. As far as employee recruitment, that is almost more of a public relations function. We have never had those discussions with ECTO. I don't know if they would even be able to do that. I mean, we might have to bring in somebody else to do that. And I don't even know what that would look like yet.
I mean, now we're leaving it up to the chiefs to do basically whatever they can do to get the best people in, right?
Yeah, that's typically a manager's job.
Well, I'm talking about programs, and again, I don't know what form it would be, but, signing bonuses, educational expense reimbursement, maybe stay bonuses at the end of 5 years, whatever. I mean, right now, people are going to different departments for reasons. What are the competitive advantages that they have, and how can we turn that around to recruit and retain our employees?
Okay. All right, public safety under that, if you look back to 2018, we've accomplished quite a few of these from the point of, from our meeting last year, which is good. That's why public safety is not exactly the largest item there. Chiefs, do you have any other items, things you want to bring up?
Go outside to get in. Sue.
Sue, we got to let this guy in. All right, chiefs, anything?
Nothing to add.
Okay. Well, Chief, while you got the floor right now, the Mike Mitchell sentencing has also been delayed again?
Yes, it was scheduled for Thursday. The court notified us that it was rescheduled to March 14th. There's no reason. It could be as simple as the judge's schedule or other reasons.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next is item 2, infrastructure. This is water, sewer, road, sidewalks, things like that. We're going to, as we've had discussions in the past, we are going to bring back the township-wide sidewalk. Wait a minute, now that's kind of different.
One is gap and one is
One is,
repair.
yeah, installation program.
Yeah.
That would be, I guess that's really a real long-term goal. I mean, ideally to have sidewalks everywhere. Really hard to do, very expensive. That it also ties in with, where is it?
The repair
Well,
one?
Yeah, because what we're looking to do this year really is, I think a long-term goal would be to have as many sidewalks as possible, okay? But for 2019, what we're looking at is a sidewalk replacement program. Spalding to Decker is going to be quarterbacking that. They're going to have a inspector going out to take a look at those areas. We're going to use the same zones, sidewalk replacement zones that we used in the past, and then we'll go through that special assessment parcel process that we've gone through in the past. And then in addition, we'll be doing the GAP project. That's the $240,000 that we got from the county, and then we're upping that to $300,000. And Dave, I don't know if you want to elaborate more on the sidewalk projects or not.
I handed out a tentative schedule that we're working on right now, just to let you know we are working towards the easements, and that's probably for the GAP program. That's one of the biggest things we have to work on, is to get easements for these GAP areas.
Dave, I have a couple of things. I think this is too late to get bids out. We're going to get a lousy price getting advertising for bids in May, but some way we can pull this ahead. We should be quoting right now.
Well, the biggest problem we're going to have is trying to get the easements for the gaps. I mean, we could go out and spend money on doing topographic surveys and putting our designs together, but if we can't get an easement, then we've wasted that money and effort for that piece of property.
Is there some way to bid it by foot or something, like a square foot or something? I don't know how to do this, but my point is you're going to be getting bids at the peak of the construction season, and that's when the price is the peak.
Right.
Versus now when it's cold, they're thinking about their cash flow and saying, I better go grab some business right now because the government shut down, the economic boogeyman's going to jump through the window tomorrow, whatever. So they might be more eager, but I don't know how to.
Ultimately, the best time to try to bid something like this is November. It would have been November if we could have got something set up for November. Then people are planning for their initial push in the spring, like say for March and whatnot. They've already got that scheduled out right now. So whether we were to bid it, say the next month, we're still going to see probably the same prices that we're going to see in May. And what you may actually see bidding it out in May is people that are trying to load up their schedule for the end of the summer, first part of the fall, to get out and do the work as well, because they've already hit their early projects.
Yeah.
Okay, what zone are you going to start with or focus on for the repair program?
For the repair program, we're going to start focusing on the northeast and the southeast part of the township.
2 zones?
2 zones. Talking to Patrick, the last time they went through, they ended up doing the whole township because there was so few. From an economy of scale, you ended up doing the whole township. But what we're doing is we're putting this together with the GAP program, so we're hoping that the economy of scale with the GAP program would work with possibly the 2 zones.
So you said northeast and southwest?
Southeast.
Southeast. So give me a street in there. Let's see. South. Tavistock. And then north?
Lake Point.
Lake Point.
Okay, so Lake Point.
Don't those already have sidewalks?
No,
Well,
he's
that-
talking
this is for
about
the repair
repair
program. That's
program.
for the repair program.
Lake Point's in pretty bad shape, and we've had a lot of complaints from up there and a lot of tree heave and things like that over the years. What's your plan, though, for easement acquisition? Are you already reaching out to neighbors or what?
We will be reaching out to the neighbors probably next week is when we're going to start sending out letters asking for the easements, and then I'll go and meet with them once they get the letter, and I can go and sit down and talk with them about it.
Okay.
Send one to the one that I already approached. Just send a letter to them anyway. It's a tickler.
Sure.
Okay. So that's that part. Capital Asset Management Program across all departments. Again, that's more of a long-range goal. Patrick, I don't know if you guys have ever done that in DPW? No? For sewer? Yeah, I mean, to extend that to other operations.
Is this a BS&A module that you use? Well, I guess what I'm thinking, Cindy in accounting keeps the fixed asset. So this is an extension of that, or help me out. So you're talking about a replacement timing plan, is that what capital asset management is?
And that can be applied to different functions in government. It can be roads, it can be parks, it can be a lot of different things. Yeah. So again, kind of a broad range concept that we would like to take a look at. What does CityWorks? What will CityWorks be doing for us? Okay. Okay. Okay, good. Let's see, moving on, we have LED lighting at major use buildings, police, DPW, police, and fire. The game plan would be right now, wherever we have, what's your situation at DPW, Pat? Do you have LED lights in the garage now or no? Yeah. Fire is kind of half and half right now. You kind of replace, as they burn out, you replace them with LED lights.
That's affirmative. When we reopened Station 2, we put LED lights on there. They were a lot better than the old sodium vapor lights we had. We also replaced LED lights at Station number 3, which was built in, I believe, 1990.
Okay.
And then as they burn out, we've been replacing them with new LEDs.
So you're replacing the bulbs, not the fixture.
No, we are doing both. When the fixtures burn out, we replace fixtures.
So that's a capital expenditure.
Yeah. So police, you just use them in the Sally ports out there, or what?
Well, if the board recalls, we're in the process of redoing the dispatch center, new carpet, new paint, and we met today and we discussed having LEDs installed in the dispatch and lockup center.
Oh, inside the building, yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I was just thinking about outdoors. Okay. So that's something to think about. Plymouth Road, Hines, Haggerty corridor improvements and accessibility issues with county. This is going to be a big issue for us this year with the city of Plymouth and also with Wayne County. This really stemmed from the Courthouse Grill apartment project. We had discussions about trying to get people from Plymouth Road and Haggerty, but basically the Mill Street, Plymouth Road, Haggerty corridor there, that whole area in both the township and the city. We're trying to get people into Hines Park. We want better accessibility. We got to have a better road. Plymouth Road in that stretch is a mess. It's gravelly in some areas. There's no sidewalks. There's no accessibility issues whatsoever. We've had a lot of complaints from residents about that who now have moved into that area. They want to be able to bike, walk, and jog throughout the two communities and into Hines Park, and it's very difficult to do that right now. Plus, we have an incredible amount of work going on at the old Burroughs building. They're like one big score away from landing a major tenant. And if that kind of thing happens, the employees who work there are going to be millennials and others who want to walk, bike, and jog to work and go downtown Plymouth and make their way around.
For them is very easy. There's a sidewalk along the east side of Haggerty Road that the township paid to build a long time ago. So they can go all the way from their front door at Burroughs down into Hines Park. It's already built. Goes over the bridge. Yes, it is. Hooks right to the bike path in Hines Park.
Talking about south on Haggerty.
You go south on Haggerty.
Yeah.
And then there's another one half a mile or less east. It's Riverside has a sidewalk down to the bike path.
Well, we're looking
and that's accessible from the city of Plymouth because you can come along Ann Arbor Trail. So there's some there in the east end, but the Park View Drive, which is on Mill Street, across in the Bathy, there's no good access there. That's a gravel road. Into the you were a police officer in Plymouth City, so you use that road a lot. So there's some issues there, but that's all in the city there, that road.
Right, and the idea is to coordinate all of this with the county and the Bathy site as well, because that's going to be residential now, and people are going to, there's going to be a lot more people in that area who are walking, biking, and jogging.
Yeah, that dirt road would be a great spot to have a bike or sidewalk path on.
Yeah, and we've also talked in connection with the Courthouse Grill project that we would need something going down from there as well. We've had, there's really no access for the people who live along Plymouth Road in both communities.
Have you had any good discussions with the city on this?
We have had good discussions, but they've been very preliminary. I'm going to be meeting with Khalil Rahal from the CEO's office on Thursday. This is
Wayne County.
Wayne County, yeah. This is going to be one of our discussion items.
Well, it's good to hear the city of Plymouth would be positive about this.
Oh, yeah, for sure. So keep your eye out on that. DDA plan to submit to state.
Could I just one second back on the create the separate building maintenance? You know, we have a building department and we have inspectors for different types of electrical, plumbing, and everything else. I think we need to have an assessment done on all the buildings as part of having a building maintenance fund. And I think we need to assess the structures, you know, the roofs and sidings and brick and mortar of all of our buildings and then create a plan of replacement or maintenance needs to go on it. We have a building department and inspectors. I think they could be used in that way so that we can know how we're going to spend our money.
Probably be cheaper than having the roof blow off and.
Okay, DDA plan to submit to the state of Michigan. State law was changed last year, requiring DDAs to submit a kind of a master plan. The state wants to know where the money's going. And the thing is that we have a lot of DDAs and TIFAs around the state that are sitting on a lot of money. We have DDAs and TIFAs that arguably spend money on projects that are outside of their scope, and that's caught the attention of the legislature. So the legislature is asking us to come up with a plan for DDAs.
Why is there concern? It's not money from the state.
But it is captured tax money from businesses, and there have been a sufficient number of businesses who have said, that's my money, and I don't like the city or the township holding on to it and spending it on projects that I don't like. And they caught the eye of the ear of the legislature over the last several years. So our plan, we have our DDA is very unusual. It's a linear DDA. It's not a downtown per se. It's not like downtown Plymouth or Northville. So we're working with Laura Haw to put something together. We don't want to spend a whole lot of time or money on it. It's not necessary. I've given her some ideas on things that we would like to see, but we're very limited in our budget and our scope of revenue that the DDA can capture. So
The money is getting significant. I know a couple of years ago when they were looking at the new street light posts, we just couldn't afford them. But we've got almost $1 million now in that DDA fund, and come March we'll have another $300,000. So we'll be at $1.3 million, which is now I think a substantial amount of money where you could do some good things along that corridor.
And we are going to talk about one of those upcoming. I have here SAW grant related infrastructure compliance.
That's just, if I'm interpreting it correctly, the SAW grant results have just been completed.
Right.
They've come up with roughly a 15-year suggestion on what should be replaced and when. And now it really comes down to the execution of that plan.
And that would come from the water budget?
Correct.
So we will have a review of that SAW grant results when they're ready?
Patrick?
Yeah, I'd like to see what it says. We have it was sewer only, correct? So our sewer system is relatively new compared to most places, so I'd like to see what it says.
You'd be ready. The water budget, I think we're going to do on February 22nd, I think, or whatever the second meeting in February. Would you be able to give us a summary that night? I don't want to get too deep into it. If not, we can delay that, but I don't want to delay the water budget either. So. Just keep it really simple for us. Okay.
Maybe you could do a 5-minute video summary in advance. Because you used video on the SAW grant, didn't you? You're very familiar with that.
Get a video of inside the pipes.
Okay. Clean up, fix up Ann Arbor Road rail overpass. This is another ambitious goal because whenever you're dealing with the railroad companies, they are terrible to deal with. But what we would really like to see in the DDA, this is a DDA idea, is that we'd like to be able to see that railroad overpass over Ann Arbor Road cleaned up, painted, get rid of the graffiti, get rid of the rust. That overpass was probably built in the 1920s or 30s, and it would be nice to see that cleaned up a little bit. I had success this past year getting MDOT and Wayne County and I believe CSX to trim some of the trees and bushes that were choking off the view there.
So is this beautification, or does it also include accessibility? Because people walk in the road underneath that overpass.
The DDA has had that discussion in the past about putting sidewalks in there. Very expensive. I mean, that would eat up a lot of your DDA surplus right now. And I mean, you've worked with utilities. You know what the railroad companies are like. I mean, they are still protected by the Federal Railroad Act of 1863 or something, and they.
Is that property underneath the underpass? That's railroad property?
It may be MDOT property, because remember, Ann Arbor Road is still state.
We have a new director of MDOT who's going to be really creative and spend money better than previous. So obviously, we could appeal to the new MDOT.
Well, what we should do is put that in our DDA plan, and then we can point to it and say, here's what we'd like to spend some money on, but we can't do it alone.
Well, that is a safety issue. I mean,
Yeah.
a couple of people have died there.
I know one that did.
Yeah, a guy got hit on a bicycle and was killed, and then another person, a pedestrian. And so several people have been killed there.
We were forbidden to go there as kids.
Yeah.
But one way to build a sidewalk would be to go on the top.
And have a bridge.
No, you just would have to wait. You'd have a crossing.
No, you can't, and federal law prohibits, it is actually a violation of federal law to step on railroad tracks.
Yeah, but how do you, well, wait a minute. In Plymouth City, there's 12 of them, and you step on them all the time because the sidewalk goes over the top.
You are prohibited from stepping on railroad tracks.
I know, but
it's like stepping on an active airport runway. They can arrest you.
Right, but Royal Oak has railroad crossings.
But I don't want to encourage I don't want to build a sidewalk that encourages people to
Yeah,
cross.
maybe we don't
railroad
need to
tracks.
design it tonight, but maybe it's a good
okay.
goal.
All right, speaking
Good
of
idea.
designing it tonight,
Darn.
Plymouth Township had a one-day charrette that had architecture students come up with all kinds of ideas for that overpass. We had to dig them out. Was it done in 1993? Jim Anowitz coordinated it. It was at East Middle School. It was a day-long charrette with architects and architectural students from U of D and University of Michigan.
What's a charrette?
It's a design
dance.
exercise. So they made drawings. They did a lot of work. We ought to see if we can find it. Maybe a call to Jim Anowitz, who has it in his archives, his personal archives. They had a lot of really good ideas. It looked great.
Okay, I'm writing that down.
1993,
Dave
a long
Richmond,
time
is
ago.
that something that maybe you guys might have in the old files?
I'll go back and look and see if we have anything.
you
in
find
it.
something.
Yeah, I'll try to see what.
No,
we
I don't
have.
think it was done. I don't think Dietrich Bailey was involved directly.
They may not, but they may.
It'd be
there
in
may
the
be something
planning
there.
department would be the first place I'd look. Archives in the planning department and a phone call to Jim Anowitz, who lives in Michigan still.
Yep, I got his number. Okay, replace, repair worn out and damaged neighborhood street signs with county. But we started this project back in the late summer. I really did not get any terrific feedback from residents, so I would like to just restart that project this year. We have a lot of the old street signs that go back to the 1970s. They are the old black on white street signs, neighborhood street signs. They're not up to code anymore. They don't match any normal modern safety standards, and some of them are just they look bad. So those are the responsibility of Wayne County, and what we would like to do is work with the county to get these signs replaced, but we need the public's help in identifying these. Otherwise, we're going to have to drive around and do it ourselves, and I'm sure we're going to miss some. We've let the HOAs know in the past about this. We got a couple responses, but I was expecting a much greater response. So
Here's an idea for a synergy. If you're doing the sidewalk replacement program, note it if you're going to be walking the sidewalks, you're doing it in the two oldest areas of Plymouth Township. Pick it up.
Yeah, but Lake Point has brand new signs throughout the sub that they paid for. It's really more in the you do. Oh yeah, you do. A lot of them are in the midpoint of town or south of Ann Arbor Road, west of the freeway, sort of in the middle of town. I mean, the western part is pretty good because it's more modern, and then some of the subs have updated their signs voluntarily. So, but we'd like to restart that program as well. Let's see, implement and follow through on SAD projects. We're doing that. So right now for this year we have Litchfield and we have Rolling Oaks.
None of them will actually be pouring concrete this year. Is that correct?
Yeah.
They will be pouring concrete?
Yeah.
All right.
One thing I'd like to, I don't know where it goes. I'm thinking infrastructure, but how about a phone grade for Township Hall, an upgrade?
What is it? What grade?
An upgrade
Phone?
for phones. You know,
You mean the PBX system?
if somebody calls in here, their number doesn't show up. When they leave a number, most of the time, we don't get it because the voicemail doesn't catch it all. And I've talked to quite a few employees that said it would really help their job and go a long way.
I don't think it needs a new phone. I think it needs better management. It's not that old of a system. Caller ID and all that.
There's no caller ID.
It's
But,
a pretty old.
Well, then you could buy them, what, 2005? Isn't that old?
It was, yeah, that's pretty old.
That's old for
15
telephones.
years old.
To the point where none of the equipment is supported anymore by the vendor. I mean,
Right.
it's just, and the,
I mean, they went out of business?
no, they just, the version that we're on and the hardware that we're on, they don't support it anymore. They don't make the spare parts. We actually, that was in the budget and was removed from the budget. It was roughly a $70,000 expense.
Not worth it.
And it was removed from the budget, but it's clearly worth reviewing and revisiting.
So like, and one option for an organization this size is to go to an OpEx model. So it's, you basically get phones deployed by a vendor. There's a lot of them out there that do it, and they charge you a flat fee per month for it. And they have all the bells and whistles.
Well, I think we can do one.
Cisco's got an offer. Like
Okay. We can do one thing easily. Could do it tomorrow. Everybody needs to review their greeting. When you call the Plymouth Township General Mail and you go through and you say if you have a water bill, it says fax your water bill. No one uses faxing.
Actually, they do, and we get a lot of faxed bills at time of closing.
Yeah, but why don't we have the ability to email them?
Because people can go online and they can email them to us. I mean, how many options do you want on a phone message?
Well, fax is definitely the obsolete one.
It's not, actually. I talked to the people who work there.
in
I
the
don't know. Very few
hospital-
residents have
In
faxes.
the hospital, we
Realtors
fax
do.
3 million pages a month.
Realtors do. Talk to the staff. So, okay, let's move on to fiscal integrity. I gave you all the updated personnel chart. Not sure what that has to do with fiscal integrity, but you thought you should have one, just in case it were
Hopefully
to
they're
come
all
up
honest
today.
employees, right?
Compliant.
Pardon me?
Never mind.
Yeah. Lots of pretty colors.
The ones in blue and green on.
Yeah. So we've got here OPEB compliance under the new state law. We're doing that. Reduce water billing labor specialization risk. I think that's Mr. Kermy. Do you want to elaborate on that?
So I want to, presently it appears to be in the hands of one person. I want cross-training. I think you guys already started that.
Yeah.
I don't want the township to be held hostage if the person becomes ill or quits.
Right.
Amen.
We are trying to cross-train the newest woman who is in the water department. One of our problems is retention. We've had, we had a gal who was in there for about a year. We trained her, and then she left for Dearborn because they pay more.
Yep.
So, it's a challenge to keep people current when we're also competing against our neighboring communities. I included this one: aggressively monitor and review 35th District Court budgets and financing. If you have not attended a meeting of our court authority recently, you're missing out. They are very interesting, heated, amazing meetings, and we are arguing over money, we're arguing over budgets, labor contracts, revenues, policing styles, other things that impact the courts. So we for this year, for the current year budget, the 19 budget, we are assuming zero revenue from the court, and that's the first time that we have done that in a long time, if ever. The reason being that any, we hate to use the word profit, but any profit that the court makes is going to be going into their OPEB fund, which they also have to do under state law, just like we. So they've created an OPEB fund, and that's where the money is going from all of the communities. They are also putting in approximately $600,000 a year of the bond payments on the courthouse. So is this the last year they have to pay, or are we free and clear now? We're free and clear this year. So they're taking $600,000 that we were putting into the old court, the court bond, and then adding into that any potential revenue or profit that is made by the court. How we get to that revenue is, of course, wow, we have had some really amazing discussions, very blunt, very emotional discussions about how we get to that point, because you're talking about Plymouth, Canton, Northville City, Plymouth City, and the court itself, and it's very interesting.
How can we get them to convert new hires to defined contribution like the rest of the state of Michigan does for state employees and many other private employers?
I think the new hires are going into a DC plan, or no? Do you remember that one? I don't. The new hires are, but they still have most of their employees on the DB plan. They just made that switch over like a couple of years ago, so
they have switched.
They're behind
because there was some question
for the new guys. But they don't hire on the scale that we do, so the majority of their employees are still in a DB plan, and that DB plan still is not fully funded. So anyway, so we got to just keep a very constant eye and vigilance on that. Settle labor contracts at total cost. This is Chuck's thing here, so it's kind of.
Look up. I don't know. I think the CPI last year, but it's got to be specific to the region. It's around 2.2%. But Ann Arbor, Detroit has their own, so we need to access that. That can be our benchmark total.
Okay. Reduce retiree health insurance costs. This is kind of pops up a couple times here.
That was mine.
Chuck, that was yours.
The easy one, which private companies are doing already, is requiring you to take your spouse's insurance first. If you have a spouse that's employed, you got to go to them. And then the other way is they don't cover. Another thing they'll do is they'll say, okay, we'll cover you, but not your dependents, your spouse and your dependents. You got to pay extra. So for people who are working, who are retired, we need to think about something creative. I'm not in that industry of insurance, but if you're 50 years old, you're retired from Plymouth Township, you get a job somewhere else, you should be getting that insurance from that new employer, not Plymouth Township. We should require that. That can be easily done. Plus, we need to rationalize so that the co-pays, like you have said, other people have said, that the co-pays are relatively consistent. We're paying Part B for some long-time retirees, Social Security Part B. It's a lot of low-hanging fruit.
I think government is the only place where people get health care after they leave their employer. I don't think anybody else, maybe 3-4% of the private employers in this country still provide health care. That's it.
So we're doing it. We're not saying we're going to get rid of it, but let's make it. Let's rationalize it. And there isn't a lot of groundswell of support to do that because it's a change, I know, but it's a tough world out there, and those who are funding these OPEB benefits don't get retiree health care at all. No. They get $1,800 a year lump sum or something like that.
Okay. Next one is redesign water bill.
That was mine.
Yours.
I'm sorry, what?
Recently, Medford Township did exactly that. They took away health care from their employees. They completely reversed that decision because it was so bad for their retention.
All right, let's move on.
Yeah, so I understand where your position is. This doesn't affect recruiting. This are people who are retired that are 50 years old. We're not saying no insurance. We're saying let's be the second tier.
Okay,
so,
let's move on.
People are retiring at 50 and they're taking $1 million after they leave their employment.
Okay. So, redesign water bill, Chuck?
Yeah, that was to show consumption, historical consumption. There is some space on the back if you eliminate the map that shows. You probably don't need a map anymore with Google. Now, I know Mark told me, yes, it is available online to go do it, but most people, if you see it in front of you, like when you get your DTE, it tells you what you used last year, for example. I don't know. This is something to think about. I don't know who the boss of water billing is anymore.
Pat, is that something that CityWorks does? Like a water bill creation?
I've seen those pretty graphs that show the historical consumption that are on the people's water bills. That's usually associated with automatic meter infrastructure. We haven't gone down that path as of yet.
But we have the raw data from. We have the raw data.
We have the raw data. It would probably be a computational program that you have to figure out, implement in BSNA, and it will print out numbers as opposed to nice graphs that you see in some of these other communities that have automatic meter infrastructure.
And automatic meter infrastructure is what, quickly?
It's where you have radio read water
Yeah.
meters that are coming into the central facility
Right.
and automatically downloading the data, as opposed to us going out and taking.
You don't have water meter readers.
Correct. Yes.
Right.
Well,
So-
let's just benchmark and see if anybody's doing it or what they're doing in our area. I thought I had a water bill that I'd given here a year and a half ago from Warren that showed it. I don't know.
Okay.
I'll see if I can find some people that live elsewhere that can give me their water bills.
Chuck,
Is-
the next, whoops, go ahead.
As long as we're on the subject of water bills, I'd like to add a couple bullet points, and it's probably a good time to discuss them. And I'd just throw them out. The first one would be, I would like to revisit if we can increase the water bill billing cycle to 30 days. Right now, when we send out a bill, by the time we send out the bill, the citizens really have about 20 days to pay it, or less. And so I'd like to see what we can do to change the process to increase that to 30 days, and then people won't yell at me anymore.
That is just amazing that people don't know they're going to get a water bill every 3 months.
Well, you know,
And how big it is.
Before I had this position, I was one of those guys that I took all my bills and I threw them in a slot and I paid them at the end of the month, and I paid 5% extra every time on my Plymouth Township water bill because it was always late, every single time.
And you're managing our money? I hope you're not doing that now.
Well, no, I'm a changed man now. I'm a changed man ever since I
Treasurer.
and you got a lot more money out of me than water.
I would have shut you off.
Surprised you.
So on behalf of all people like me, I would like to extend that water billing cycle to 30 days. The other thing, Patrick, I would like to revisit the automated meter reading to see if that, I know when it was looked at a number of years ago and it wasn't technically or economically feasible, but I think some things have changed, and I think it's worth revisiting if we can read meters electronically, wirelessly these days. And then the third one was just to review the water rate methodology. Again, it's
brought that up several times. It's important.
it is, yeah.
About the meter size, the diameter, minimum?
All the above. I mean, right now the rate is if you pay $1 for the use of water, you pay $1.50 for the sewage. And the answer is we need the same amount of money, but how you get to that same amount of money would potentially change. Some people would be paying more for water and less for sewage, and vice versa. I'm not suggesting that we do it immediately, but I think we've got to update the methodology because things have really changed. It costs us a lot more today to buy the water than it does to dispose of it. However, the way we're billing our customers is the complete opposite.
So that's because it used to be the opposite.
Because it used to be the opposite. Yeah, exactly right.
But thanks to YCUA and WTUA,
oh yeah,
it's a lot lower.
Our sewage expenses are significantly lower than they were even 2 years ago.
But whatever we do, I don't think we want to encourage wasting of water, right? Or overwatering of lawns?
No, absolutely not.
All right.
Right. But anyway,
Sprayscape, yeah.
put it on the, my suggestion would be put it on the to-do list to see what improvements we could make to the current methodology.
Hey, Cindy, the last time that was done, did Plant Moran do something like that? Do they do those kinds of rate methodologies?
Yes, they have.
Are they the only show in town that would do something like that? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Patrick, you probably remember I think they were in here at least once even when Shannon Price was on board. So it hasn't been that long ago.
Okay. Conduct training for employees and others in completed staff work and presentations. I think that's Chuck.
Yeah, that's my idea. Oftentimes, things come in here that are not totally laid out, and then that's one reason that creates confusion or lots of questions. You need to anticipate the questions and have them either written down and handed out before or have them with you. A step in that direction is the police department has been doing a much better job by using that one document for capital. That's an idea. I don't know what that document is called, and the fire department has tried it out, and it worked well for them. But we get things in here that just, we're making decisions oftentimes by guessing, and that's not good, or we don't understand. So completed staff work. It was a concept invented during World War II when people were dying on the field. They had to come to make their decisions in a meeting, have all the answers, so that when the general made the decision, he could make the decision in that meeting and walk out, and they could telegraph the information to the field. So that's where the word completed staff work came from.
It's a great idea.
Increase collection rate for transport, emergency recovery, and hazmat.
That's another one of me. That's me.
Okay.
I can't completely understand how much we're writing off, so I want to work on writing off less. I don't know how to do it. I've been talking about that a lot. The fire chief has started making a document. I don't completely understand the document, but he's working. There's a thing, you get what you inspect. So if management is paying attention to something, then it'll usually get done. So that's what this is. For a long time, in prior administrations, we left a lot of money on the table for recovery, emergency recovery, transports, and hazmat. I think we did a pretty good job. But between Cindy Kushner and I think it's the fire chief will have most of the workload on this.
Okay. Develop new formula for determining joint dispatch cost sharing with City of Plymouth. This, we've had joint dispatch for a while with the city. That's based, the annual payment is based on a formula that I don't know if anybody ever fully understood it, and we've asked Cindy to meet with her counterpart in the city to work out a new formula that is more up to date, easier to understand, and is based on more accurate data. So,
Are they amenable to this?
yes.
Okay.
Well, they're currently 2 years in arrear on final payment, so it's confusing them, I guess.
And we owe them some money too. So
I think we talked recently. Turns out they may owe us again. So tells you how the confusion is.
We owe them too. So it's a lot like the fire pension issue because it's based on some wacky formulas.
I think, Cindy, you told me that you were working on that.
She is.
And you found an error, and it's pretty substantial. Could be as much as $50,000 in our favor for 2 years in a row. Well, 3 years in a row.
So, improve performance-based review of non-union employees. I put that in there. I just need to do a better job of that, especially if we're going to be tying it to wages. So that's on me.
Well, I hope annual performance reviews really are oftentimes a stressful disincentive for employees. constant feedback or some other way to up performance has got to be done. So many people, even in the private sector, everybody's been dissatisfied with performance reviews, and there's got to be something different that we can, or a different method we can use. But it makes people, oftentimes it reduces their performance because of the stress around it and the emotionalism, and so for a week afterwards or 2 weeks after, they're still not focused on their job because of being upset about what they perceive as a misunderstanding of what their real performance is.
Indeed.
Not me, I always get top ratings.
Goes without saying.
Yeah, privatization, contracting out of various services, that's sort of an ongoing thing. We've seen privatization this past year with the HR function. We're always looking for better deals on contracting. Another example of that would be the lawn maintenance. We've gone with a new contractor on that, which is saving us money. So, the idea is that we should be always looking for ways to contract out and privatize as much as possible to reduce our overhead. So that's kind of an ongoing goal there. Implement customer satisfaction surveys. There's many different ways of doing that. That's something I'd like to work on this year. That would be both permanently incorporated into our website and also attached to individual emails. We've seen many communities and elected officials who will have a permanent link on their email that will basically say, how are we doing? And then that will send you to a Survey Monkey or similar platform where you can answer a few simple questions about performance and responsiveness, et cetera.
Mayor Fouts from Warren was talking about something like that on the radio this week.
Yeah, it's not a new concept. It's just something that we have not been able to, we have neither had the time or the money to worry about it. So this gives us the opportunity to do that. 2-year budget starting with 2020-21. We'd like to do that for the next year's budget and make it a 2-year budget. A lot of our contemporaries do that, and I think we've got our fiscal house in order, and I think it's time for us to join the 21st century and start doing 2-year budgets. And I think Cindy likes that idea too. She does. Okay. Review fees for employee investment plans. We're doing that right now. We're trying to get, we're encouraging the union contracts are not all on the same page. We have some employees that are on the MERS plan. We have our clerical staff that is on the John Hancock plan. John Hancock just costs a lot more for the employees. The fees are much higher than they are than MERS. MERS has been identified as the most cost-effective and economical one that provides the most savings for the employees. We're confident that the clerical union will agree to switch over to MERS, and that will ultimately impact all of the other unions that are silent on that topic, including the non-union officials as well. MERS will be meeting with the non-union folks on February 12th to go over the benefits, drawbacks, or whatever answer questions that you may have regarding the MERS plan. We also have a 457 plan. We have a health savings plan. So we have other investment options that are handled by other companies, and their rates are also, their fees are much higher than what MERS offers. So that is an ongoing discussion, and frankly, if people ultimately want to stay with the providers that they have, we can do that, but at least we're on the record of having offered them some options. Yeah. We ultimately are the fiduciaries of these funds, and so we have a responsibility to be looking out for plans that are favorable to our employees and that fulfill our responsibilities as fiduciaries. If the employees choose to give more money to Wall Street, then that's up to them, and we've at least done our job. So, but I think that's an ongoing process.
Good idea.
Anything else under fiscal integrity? All right, let's move on to quality of life. Future of Hilltop Golf Course. We had a lot of discussion about that tonight, and possible implementation of a master plan. I think that's been pretty much discussed quite a bit by all of us. Creation of good neighbor districts based on voting precincts. This is an idea that I'm stolen from the city of Dearborn, where I grew up. What the mayor used to do there is every voting precinct, and they have a lot more of them now, but we could certainly do this. Every voting precinct would be assigned to an individual. Could be all of us. So that takes care of 7 out of 12 right there. And curb your enthusiasm, Gary.
You could campaign
No.
4 years in a row.
No, that's not the. No, some of us do that all the time, but that's not the point. So the point would be, and then what we could do is take a department head like maybe Patrick or Cindy or Sue, and then Sue's like, heck no, and we could assign them to one of our precincts. And the idea is that you drive around your precinct like once a month, and just look for things, ordinance violations, things that look out of sorts, a tree that might be, a branch that might be hanging over a street or something like that, a street sign that needs replacing that's been there since the 1970s, things that just look out of sorts, and then, report back to the appropriate department for potential action. So it's just kind of an extra eyes and ears to supplement the HOAs and the police folks that work with the HOAs.
I was going to say, you have HOAs, so
yeah,
you don't want to duplicate that effort.
No, but I think it's just good to have a second set of eyes out there. And so you go out, you drive around. We can rotate them around so you don't have to be doing your neighborhood necessarily.
Well, there's also a frustration level, because if you see, say, a traffic light at McClumpha and Ann Arbor Road that you think needs to be improved, you create an expectation on the part of the community that something's going to happen, and then state government swoops in and does nothing. So are you talking about more mundane things like tree branches, like, okay.
Like that gigantic
something within our
pothole that's
control.
right at McClumpha and Ann
Well,
Arbor Road
see,
right
potholes, we don't have any control over. So if it's something we control, I'm supportive of this.
But if you can report those things in, then that's how we help to control them. We can't fix everything.
I would hope citizens would do that too. So
yeah, they do.
So are we keeping a spreadsheet for the road issues that we can, when you go to your meeting with the county executive, you can bring that with you with specific road pothole or other issues? Why wouldn't?
Well, I mean, we're not going to.
Why don't we want to manage them by forcing them to pay attention?
Because we communicate with them daily regarding potholes and other county road issues.
But having it on a spreadsheet.
Did they ever?
I'll take care of it.
Look at trucks on Ridge Road, right? The trucks.
That's a good point.
And
That's something we control.
yeah, and speed limits and things like that. Okay. Speed.
So something to think about. Let's see. Pursue joint recreation opportunities and promotion with city and/or park. 2 years ago, if you look at my campaign flyers, I said we should pursue joint recreation with the city of Plymouth. I think the park millage odyssey last year may have derailed those ideas, that discussion, but I still think that joint recreation opportunities and promotion with the city or organizations like Park are entirely within our wheelhouse, and we should be doing that. We don't have the money for recreation. We do not have the money for recreation. We don't provide any recreation programs outside of the senior council that's doing things at Friendship Station and what we have at Township Park, which is mostly lawn maintenance and building maintenance and, the sprayscape. So well, some of the baseball fields are handled by the
City residents
people
get
who are using
discounts at the golf course. Yeah.
They are. They're
48170.
No, we're talking about two different things. So we don't provide any recreation. If you look at our comparable neighbors around us, I mean, we're not even, there's no comparison. So I think we should do more with the city. We've already have a joint recreation master plan with them. It looks like Park is going to be around for a while, just as a 501c3, similar to the YMCA. So those are things to think about. Improvements to DTE service and reliability. I have a feeling that was Mr. Dempsey's.
Really?
Probably. You're the DTE man.
I guess it was just to keep the focus
Okay.
on whether they are actually doing anything.
Well, we had a very good meeting with them today, about almost a 2-hour meeting between myself and Chief Phillips, and we've asked them to come before the board for an update on what they've done in 2018 and then what they hope to do this year. But it's, I mean, I know you may disagree, Jack, but I do think the progress is being made. We look at it in terms of outages that have been reported. We look at it in terms of complaints that we've gotten in our office, complaints that DTE has received. I know you're in a tough neighborhood there, and they're working on it. You know,
I'm fine now.
Huh?
I've taken matters into my own
Yeah,
hands. I'm fine. So
you have a generator now.
I'm other than representing the township residents and their dissatisfaction with their level of service, I could care less what they do now.
Yeah, well, okay.
They've driven me off their system. Thank you.
But you're off the grid.
Question on that. If we have another March 8th, 2017, we have an agreement with them on how to handle our workload from the fire department and how whether they're going to pay us?
Actually, that was one of the things that the chief talked with them about today, where I had to leave the meeting, but I think that's still a work in progress unless you have something new to add.
Is there a mechanism, or it has to go to court every time?
There is not a mechanism. This is something that it's still a work in progress. I mean, it's safe to say this is not something that they want to negotiate with us on. I mean, paying out money to us is not something they're fond of doing.
Can you clarify what are we talking about here?
When there are wires down, like the big windstorm, the fire department goes out there, and if we deem those to be dangerous, we will maintain personnel on the scene until a DTE representative arrives on scene and relieves us of it. We've had trouble in the past. We bill DTE for that time. After we've arrived, we've made the scene safe before their representative gets there. We've had, some discussions with DTE on paying us for that time. That time is permissible under our ordinances. And
What does that mean? That means you keep firefighters.
we keep firefighters on the scene of a dangerous
away.
situation.
Yeah.
When wires
Is there
down,
argument
literally.
that this is not,
Been a quicker way to say.
is this an argument on their part that they aren't able to recover those costs in their rates?
That's,
Well,
that's
I'd like
not
to get
something
them in
I've
front of the
ever
board now.
gotten
Now I'm energized again.
Oh, no.
So let's have them come in, because I'd like to know that.
All right, we plan on having them come in.
All right. We collected what percent on the dollar from that March 8, 2017? Is that where we got $8,000? What percent did we get?
We billed them, what, 13,000? They paid us 8,000, so
Okay. Not bad.
We got something. This is the first time we've ever gotten anything?
It's the first time we've sued them.
All right. That's what I think.
So art exhibits at Township Hall, it's something we'd like to pursue in the new year as well. We just got so many dreary hallways and blank spaces here at this building. Be nice to brighten it up with some local artwork, get some rotating artwork in the building.
You could have
So
your own gallery up there
we
at
could-
the top of the stairway, that empty space.
could have a swimming pool up there. It's a lot of blank space in this
Jack
building.
does coloring. I know if we can put those pictures up.
I can do graffiti.
There you go. A mural.
With a spray can.
Well, I don't want to get into
Livonia
that.
has a very nice one, by the
The
way.
police chief is here. I don't want to admit anything.
In the building, yeah.
In the building,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, reduce Hilltop Golf Course operating loss.
Do you think that?
I didn't put that in there,
feasible is
but
that?
It wasn't mine.
it wasn't mine.
No, it was my idea, but I mean,
I
what
think
are the
Bob,
chances of it? Is it a
Bob asked me at the
50% chance?
Bob asked me at the beginning of the meeting if I could take the AMV proposal and go back
Number
5
that,
years
yeah.
to see what our loss would have been under this financial arrangement. So, you know what I mean? So like last year we lost whatever, $100,000. What would we have lost, or what would we have made under the new proposal that's in place?
How can you make the variables of the number of,
You don't, you just keep the assumption.
just keep
You
the
said-
round same?
Yeah.
Same thing.
Oh, yeah, keep the revenues the same, the expenses the same, and what would our financial position. So anyway, I think that's a great idea. I'm going to do that. And maybe that will help answer that question, is if we're going to reduce
I
our
like
losses by 50%.
So Mark's going to work on that. And we'll probably have a new contract as well. Reduce Township Park operating expense, especially sprayscape. That's Chuck.
Do something, well, we're already doing, one big thing is the lawn maintenance. Well, no, that's not Township Park, that's other parks.
No, that's Township Park. I mean,
You're not mowing, you don't have contractor mowing the lawn in there.
no, but we've reduced staff and we're buying new equipment.
So we're partway there. The sprayscape, I don't know how you do it, or we need to find out if the software, or whatever it is, the board is really functioning well. Who knows, it may be sticking or something.
I think it's working exactly as it was designed. We spent about $13,000 in 2017 to fix it, and it's working properly. It's activated by people. You got to hit a paddle to get it activated. It's a very popular amenity at the park, probably the most popular thing in the summertime, and it's heavily used.
So when it's pouring rain and that sprayscape is on, it's because of a human has not hit the button and said turn it off?
If you have seen it operating in the rain, let us know. I mean, I'm not going to say it's foolproof, but it's motion it's not motion activated. It's you have to hit a button to get it moving.
Good.
So the bollard has a switch on it.
There's a couple switches actually.
But $40,000 in water, I mean, if we had $40,000 profit improvement at the golf course, we'd be happy.
Well, this is a decision that previous boards have made to build that thing and put it there, and we're either going to have it working or not, bottom line.
No, I'm just thinking, is there some other intervention or invention to make it work so it wastes less water?
Okay.
I know you go through.
Creation of historic district ordinance, that is something Jack is working on, and that will be before the board in the month of February.
Help me out with that, Jack. At the risk of sounding like a smartass, what historic district is there in Plymouth Township?
Well, that's the point of the ordinance is citizens would request to create a district, and they would be able to take advantage of tax credits and probably a state tax credit that's going to come back. So we don't have that opportunity.
But my point is there aren't very many buildings that are. We burned down one of the oldest houses for practice on Powell Road in summer.
You'd be surprised if we can talk about this. There are a number of historic sites in the township. So, and this would be purely optional. This is not an overlay like
Northville
or the city of Plymouth. This is purely a citizen-driven. It's another tool in the toolkit to make sure that people can renovate their houses and preserve history. So it's a user-friendly, not a big government overlay kind of approach. And I think Mr. Bennett's been looking at it, and hopefully we'll meet soon to agree on what the text would come to the board.
Right. Okay, increase walking, running, biking options in the township. That's always a long-standing goal. A lot of it has to do with sidewalks and other initiatives that we have with the city through our joint recreation plan. County-funded projects for parks, we get about $68,000 a year from Wayne County Parks. One of the things I'd like to ask permission from them, because they don't like it when you bundle multiple years worth of money. But I'm going to ask nicely if we can combine a few years that we can use towards maybe a more specific, larger ticket project in the park, maybe in the next 2 to 3 years. I'll leave it at that. What's this?
Oh, I'm just passing that down for the next item, right?
Okay, yes.
Implement clothing, textiles, curbside recycling. Turnkey program at no cost to the township. I've tasked out the communities who are doing it. And the way this works is a private company sets this up as a turnkey. We don't have to spend any money. They will refund us in profits from if they're profitable. Might be $1,000 a year at the most. Canton has been doing it for several years. And what you put in the bag, clothes, bedding, old towels, hats, gloves. And this company picks it up on the day of your trash pickup, completely separate from GFL. Our coordinator has investigated, and her and I see almost no downside. I don't see any downside risk to this.
What do they do with it?
They sort some of it and sell it to places like Salvation Army. The other part that is not usable is then, or wouldn't be sold in the American market, would be sold overseas in third world countries. And then the remainder would be turned into fiber and other products used, for example, insulation in automobiles and other things. I've got some handout stuff here showing what other communities are doing.
I know some dog shelters and rescue shelters need, sheets and towels and stuff
Yeah,
for
you can
animals.
this is a parallel thing. If you want to donate to the Humane Society, the towels, you go ahead and do it. All this stuff that I'm handing out that's printed, you just got to hand it back to me because Sarah Wiesel, it's her document.
Would we have to execute a contract with this operator?
Yeah.
I don't think it's here they have the steps.
I mean, it has to be some kind of a,
Gotta be,
Signed contract, yeah.
yeah. Gotta have insurance, yeah.
Canton has had good success with it. They're 3 times bigger than we are. Have
Okay.
a different demographic there.
well, let's take a look at it.
So I'd like us to move forward on it.
Mm.
So let's see what,
Okay.
I can't,
I'll take a
for some reason, I just can't find anything negative about it.
Okay. While we're on the subject of recycling, I do want to, it's not on our list here, but I do want to point out that GFL, I've given you guys some recent articles on this. There's basically I hate to call it a crisis because everything's a crisis, but there's a recycling crisis in the country, nationwide right now. Recycling is not what it used to be. There is very little market for recycled materials. People are not recycling the way they're supposed to. They're commingling it with trash, things like diapers, food products, other stuff that is not recyclable. They're not cleaning things out the way they're supposed to. So a lot of the recyclables that are going to the single stream recycling facilities are not being recycled and are just being thrown away. We now have compounding that the Chinese cardboard crisis, where the Chinese are not buying our recycled cardboard anymore.
It's not cardboard, it's plastic.
Corrugated containers, thank you, sir, because you used to work in the business. So there's no market for corrugated containers. There's no market for plastic. Nobody uses glass anymore. Nobody reads newspapers anymore. So there's no newsprint like there used to be. So recycling is in crisis right now. And GFL is now starting to send letters out to places like Canton saying either you pay more for recycling or discontinue it. So that's the either or that they are giving communities. Bearing in mind that if you pay more for recycling, nothing's changing. They're not finding a market for it. They're not doing it better. They're not cleaning the trash for you. They're going to keep doing what they're doing. Yeah. And the market is still going to be as bad as it is right now. So you're going to be paying a lot of money. You're going to be paying more money to feel good.
I thought we had like one of the highest rates of recycling in southeastern Michigan.
Plymouth Township does a good job, but it's just the overall economy, the recycling economy and the overall market. And it's China. It's the fact that people are not doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Well, that's why we need to that's why Sarah Wiesel is regularly educating us in these newsletters and things of what to do so we don't pollute the stream with diapers and things.
But something as surprising as all of our boxes from Amazon, they recycle, but the tape does not that goes on there. Then we throw the tape right back in the recycle with the box every single time. The tape does not recycle, the box does.
Well, my information says cardboard, you're right. Cardboard has a huge demand now. They're recycling cardboard. That's the one.
No, they're not. You gotta do some Google some articles on that.
So you're saying that the cellulose reduces the cost of making new cardboard tremendously.
It's a lot of it.
There's a limit to the percentage you can use.
You worked at the box factory.
There's a limit to the percentage you can use. And if the main taker of that, which is China. Are stopping for one reason or another, whatever their reason is, whether it's economic warfare or whatever, then there's a limit to how much you use internally in the nation here, and there's a limit to how much recycled material you can put into the corrugated container because the fibers are short.
Well, 2 years ago, China stopped taking our plastic. But boxes for Amazon, for example, most of those are made locally.
And plastic, there's no market for recycled plastic because gas is so cheap, oil is cheap, so it costs more to recycle the plastic and repurpose that. But if you Google, China, cardboard boxes, Amazon, you'll see that it's a worldwide phenomenon.
What are they doing? I mean, we do a huge more recycling than trash, and so are they just throwing it out?
Yes.
Yeah, because you're
goes in
doing
the
it, Bob,
garbage.
you're doing it the right way. I'm doing it the right way. I clean everything out. I sort. I mean, I know what I'm doing. We're the good guys, but the vast majority of, not the vast, but way too many people are doing it the wrong way. And so when this stuff goes to the single stream recycling facility, they can't separate this
Can't
stuff.
separate it.
And there's stuff in there that shouldn't be in there.
Can we take that real nice thing that you sent us? Can we pick some highlights out of there and put it in the e-news? Something like the Amazon
We have
one.
recycling, we have recycling information every month in the e-news. We put it, every opportunity that we get.
But now it's a crisis, right?
Well,
It's going to cost us.
it's going to be, we have to make if we get asked, we haven't been asked formally by
Right.
GFL. If we get asked, we're going to have to make a policy decision on this.
Well, tipping fees are going to go up anyway because if they're not recycling it, they're putting it
in the
ground,
garbage.
And your
Yeah.
tipping fees are going to go up anyway.
Well, all right. So obviously we'll have to look at the
So
contract.
I'm just
Yeah.
saying it gets a heads up.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're getting a inflation increase each year already, plus the price of diesel fuel has plunged, so they shouldn't be in here yet.
But their personnel costs have gone up because, they can't afford to retain people. It's a great economy.
Good.
All right, implement a residential tree planting promotion, no cost to township. That's Chuck's as well.
Sorry, which one are we
Tree
on?
planting.
Yeah,
I skipped one, but go ahead. You got it.
council, what are those, one of those councils that you created, they're working on that.
Right.
Environmental stewardship.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, and we encourage that. We don't have the money to do it. I know DTE at one point had a tree planting grant that they were giving out. A lot of restrictions on it. One of the things I just encourage people to do is do what I did: plant trees in front of your house. I put trees in the easement. I got permission from the county at that time, and it worked out very well. We can't always expect government to do those things for you, but we'd like to. I think that'd be a great idea to have a more promotion of tree planting and more public education in that area. Salem Springs Project Citizens Advisory Committee. Okay. We have to be careful about how we do this, but the state of Michigan has now given Mr. Shostak $20 million for the Salem Springs project.
They doubled it?
They doubled it.
Was that a lame duck thing?
Yes. Yep. So they now have $20 million to spend. Their water and sewer infrastructure was about $23.4 million. So he's definitely
a freebie
on the high road here. He has got to still, the last time we investigated this, he still needs to drill a sewer line through Superior Township to Yucca. Water would more than likely would almost certainly tap into an existing major water main that runs down Joy Road and that dead ends at Napier. Yep. That water line probably comes from Dearborn and goes all the way down Joy Road, servicing multiple communities along the way. We've met with JLWA. They have said that if the project goes forward, it will not impact our pressures in any way. Canton also, at that time, was also concerned about the same thing. We have road issues, stormwater issues, drain issues, quality of life issues that we all need to address with this project. I'm just thinking, again, these are goals. I'm just thinking if we could maybe start up another citizens committee similar to what we had with the golf course that would just monitor what is going on, to go to planning commission meetings in Salem Township, to bird dog the DEQ and the Washtenaw County Drain Commissioner, some of the other permitting agencies that are out there, and just help us be our eyes and ears in the field and tell us what's going on. Because, I mean, with most of that project now funded, I'm assuming that he's going to go forward.
Now, the homeowners association off of that area has been pretty active in going to meetings and letting us know.
Right.
We probably should be supporting them a little bit more, and you're right, making it a little bit more than just them.
Right. Well, we're in regular contact with them, and we know I think, we're talking to the same guys. But I don't know if we want to formalize that structure a little bit more and also do it in a way, because we still have, there are certain legal restrictions, obviously, that we have in what's going on in a different community. But as a township, we also have rights in this as well. And I'm referring to the drain issues, the stormwater issues, the road issues. Those are all things that impact the charter township of Plymouth, Township Hall. The residents are going to have other issues, and if we can maybe better coordinate those so that our voices are heard if and when this project goes forward.
Now, what's the fine line between Wayne County and Washtenaw County, since it's right there? Say road issue.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm pretty sure, I know what the situation is in Northville with Napier Road. I believe it is the center line.
Yep.
I'm pretty sure it's the center line here, too.
Mhm.
We know it is in Northville because we had issues at the state. So, yeah.
Now, remember, Washtenaw jumped up and said, no trucks. So they put up the signs and no trucks in Washtenaw, and they sent them all our way. Now, Wayne County didn't want to do that. We're still taking their trucks. The concern is, obviously, if this thing goes forward, trucks, traffic, everything on Napier Road.
Well, there's a school impact. I'm sure Plymouth Canton wouldn't mind the kids, but I don't know where they're going to put all these additional kids. Then you've got just the social infrastructure. There's no police department in Salem. There's no fire department as we know it. There's no DPW. There's everybody there is on well and septic for the most part. So it's almost like an extension of Plymouth Township. And no one has approached us yet to talk about sharing services or contracted services. And if people are going to do that, then man, those are major policy decisions that we need to make, and I don't want to encourage sprawl in another community like that.
What about annexation?
It's a funny one because, obviously Showstack's not afraid to annex property, but I don't know if a township can legally annex another township's property in another county.
County lines is
Yeah.
a problem.
Yeah, that's a problem.
But state legislature could always.
Well, I tried. I introduced a bill that was introduced prior to me by Corriveau and Bruce Patterson, and man, we just got.
To annex?
No, we just to prohibit the annexation of a charter township by a city. And then the reverse would be, I don't know how deep in the weeds you want to get on this, but it would have effectively stopped the annexation of large population infrastructure townships like ours. It would not have stopped, oh golly, the city of Clare from annexing Bumblestump Township or something like that. I mean, it wouldn't work in that situation, but it would work in a highly urbanized township like ours. So my point is, all those bills were destroyed by the housing lobby. But I've never heard of a township. I don't think you can legally annex another township or a part of one, unless somebody changes the law. They were able to get $20 million, so I guess anything's possible. Okay, moving on. Increased cooperation with Plymouth Community Council on Aging. Their offices are here in this building. They provide a variety of services, recreation, health care, and social services for seniors in both the city and the township. And most of those, not all, but a lot of those programs are run out of Friendship. This year, Jerry and I consulted with them on a fundraiser. They raised $10,000 for the first time out, which is pretty great for a fundraiser. And I just think we need to, like with the city and with Park and other people out there, YMCA, I don't care, but we need to do more to promote them and have them promote us so that we can offer more opportunities for our folks.
In this vein, is the transportation part of that one or not? Senior transportation?
No, actually, the bus service is another bullet point, one more down, and I'll talk about that. So let's hold off on that. Privatized parks maintenance and groundskeeping, we are. We're doing more of that, and we're constantly trying to cut costs and be more efficient. Sustaining the senior bus service, we have implemented a new fare program. It's a token. So what you do is rather than a cash-only system, which is very unreliable, we are now doling out tokens. One side is Jerry's face, and on the flip side is the seal of the township, and you can buy. So
Can you tell the difference?
So
they're both leathery and.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
And old. Indistinguishable, yeah.
So 5 Jerry, 5. Oh God.
He's sitting
So
next to me.
five Jerry's will get you across town, and 2 Jerry's will get you to the doctor.
God.
So, but actually, this system has been proving very effective. We are now finding that we have our revenues have gone up. We're making more money. That's a good thing, but we still have a lot of costs that we have to deal with. The buses are very expensive to maintain. We have drivers who are part-time, but they're still an expense, and then we have the overhead with Kim Boyce over at Friendship Station. So we're looking at different options to maintain the service. It's about maintaining the service in a way that is affordable and that provides value to our customers.
How long will it take to get to break even?
I don't believe there will.
No.
Under the current
Not
situation.
talking capital, I'm just talking operating. I mean, paying for the buses, buying the buses, I'm not talking about that.
I would be unless there is a massive uptick in ridership, I don't think we will ever break even. And we still get a subsidy from SMART. That subsidy could go away, so we have to be prepared for scenarios where we could lose some of our funding sources.
So we receive SMART even though we opted out of it?
Yeah, it's basically a federal mandate that they have to offer services to seniors and handicap. All right, so economic development, we're continuing to promote 5 Mile. The MITC Redevelopment Authority is now has been approved by the state of Michigan. The first organizational meeting on that will be January 28th. So that's moving forward. We did an economic update last year from staff, and we'll do that again this year. That was, I thought it was very helpful. The repurposing we got a lot of projects that are still in the works. The Kmart property is, I believe that we will see significant movement on that property this year. I believe that they have a major, they have a tenant for the building. Some of the building will have to be demolished, which will be a brownfield project just to capture the cost of the demolition of the asbestos and PCBs that may be in the building. I don't exactly know what that entails. There may be some underground as well, but they're still looking to do the 3 outbuildings, the shopping retail outlets that were originally contemplated and approved by this board a couple years ago, the former board, but it's the board. So that would still be in place. The Steak and Ale site, the gentleman who owned it has deceased in the last couple months. The family is going through some significant changes in their family structure and ownership and legal issues, but I believe that property is now being marketed right now. I mean, there is a for sale sign there. Yeah. But I believe that we will finally start seeing some movement there as the family. I think the family is now anxious to sell, and I think we'll start seeing some action there as well.
What is the ownership name? Is it Newman?
Mr. Newman, yeah. Mr. Newman passed away.
So
no, he passed away. So
I guess though, what is our role? It says repurpose. We don't really have control over it.
Well, we don't, but we want to see it developed. I mean, we'd like to
encourage.
We certainly want to use our economic development powers to make that happen. Facilitate, thank you.
Right.
And then promote international investment in the township. If you go up and down our industrial corridors, you'll see that we have companies there from all over the world. I think with the MITC project now underway, we're going to be trying to attract and retain foreign investment, because if we could land a couple big projects from Asia or Europe, that would take care of a lot of the development for that corridor. So
Shouldn't we just generalize this to investment in general? There's nothing wrong with American investment, right?
No, I mean, we love everybody, but I think what we need to do is, for international investors are looking, especially, I always give the example of a Chinese, widget company. They may not have a North American presence. An American company that already has a presence here, they may not be interested in a 80,000 square foot corporate headquarters, but somebody from overseas might. And we've got big areas of land that we can work with, and so we're thinking that might be more attractive to people from overseas who want to plant their flag in North America.
And MEDC has gone a long way to support us in the 5 Mile corridor as well as the other things.
Okay.
One other thing on this one, include groundbreaking and ribbon cutting for all members of the board, plus let people know in advance of.
So who's going to do that?
We get invites from the chamber. Most of them are not in the township, and a lot of them are businesses that I'm not really, unless you want to go to the Lover's Lane ribbon cutting, there's just not, a lot of them are just not.
How come you got that one?
I didn't go to that one.
But I mean,
Your preferred customer.
look at Monroe Bank and Trust out here, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean,
Yeah,
that
but
was-
when
that was-
Monroe Bank and Trust invited me as supervisor to go to that, I couldn't make it, and you handle economic
But
development,
certainly
so we
we can let
designated you.
everybody else know this is going on, and.
If we're properly invited by the source.
Exactly.
The Chamber of Commerce does ribbon cuttings every month, and a lot of them are in the city, and others are maybe not,
But I will
all
do
that
that. I'll
exciting.
make sure everybody up here at least is
Good,
invited.
thank you.
To the ones that we know in the township.
What is Merchants Bank?
They're the new owner of Monroe Bank and
Monroe
Trust.
Bank.
So they're changing the name to Merchants?
Yeah.
All right, so that name comes in.
There's an additional item that's, I don't know where it fits, but it's the election commission work that the clerk and trustee Heitman and myself and others are doing to come back to this board to make recommendations on how to improve things with all the complexities of the law changes and technology and
Right.
so forth. So that's another
Good idea.
thing that we're working on that probably should be on this list.
Okay.
That's real good, yeah.
All right, anything else?
Just nothing to add to the list, just a suggestion. I mean, there's a lot of stuff on this
Yeah.
list, and I'm sure that there are people on the board that don't necessarily agree with everything on it. My recommendation, and I'll volunteer to do it, is to put this into a spreadsheet, and then I can distribute it, and I'd like everybody on the board to rank each of these on a 1 to 5 scale.
Good, great.
A 5 being, this is something we absolutely have to do this year, and a 1 being, I could take it or leave it.
So it's a 2019 guideline.
2019 guideline, and then what will come out of that would be our top priorities for 2019.
Okay.
And then, like, some of these are more, like, broader behaviors
Mhm.
versus specific goals. So is there a way to measure, how do you measure some of them so that at the end of the year you can say, yes,
Right.
accomplished or not?
I like that, yeah.
Thank you for doing that. All right, anything else? Anybody in the public?
Hi, everyone. Mary Ann McLaren, 44471 Mark Trail. I'm going to try to see if I can do this in 3 minutes. I thought I was going to do 1 point, and I've come up with maybe 4 points. Just curious, because with the Council on Aging and the other things, there was a kind of a workshop session where there was a lot of input from the senior citizens on what was looked for. I haven't seen any positive outcomes as to whether there was any plans put together. Do you know, whether you're aware of what anybody is going to do with that?
Where was this?
It was last year. in
Did the township do it?
summer. I thought it was here in the
Are
summer.
you thinking
Where
about the
was
joint
it?
recreation
Or was
master
it a-
plan?
I can't remember, you know, old age. I don't remember where it was at, but it was.
Was it
taking
here in this
input.
room?
It might have been.
Yeah, we had a seminar in
No.
here for joint recreation.
Well, no, there was also one for aging, and maybe it was at Friendship, to see what everybody
I
wanted.
think it was at Friendship.
And I think there was some people present from the township and from the city and Council of Aging and all that, but I haven't
That
seen
must have been their event.
lots of inputs,
not-
but no
Bobby
positive.
Pummel probably did that, yeah.
You know,
Bobby
I haven't seen anything that says there's any plans to be implemented.
We can try to find out, but, you know, as you know, I mean, the PCCA is a 501c3,
Right.
and we
Yeah.
coordinate with them, and I think we should do more types of coordination, but they are independent of this board.
All right. The other thing, just, I haven't really got a good handle on how many neighborhoods do not have HOAs. A way of making sure those neighborhoods are informed of what's going on, if you're using HOAs as the primary way to inform.
We don't use HOAs as a primary means. It is a supplemental to
Okay.
all the other public
Okay.
outreach that we do.
Okay.
But there are neighborhoods in the township that are not that don't have HOAs, or in many cases we've seen where HOAs have just lapsed and they're pretty much become independent, autonomous entities.
Yeah.
You know what, we do what we can to get the word out as much as we can, given the resources that we have, and that's the HOAs are a very helpful part of that if they're organized and they're getting the word out as well.
Okay.
Sometimes when we send out emails and letters to HOAs, I mean, we don't know what they're doing with that information. Some of them are really good. They have a email, they'll do an email blast, they'll put it in their own newsletters. Others, I don't know, they may just be deleting it, so.
Okay. And I am glad to see, and also I'm part of the Environmental Stewardship
Yep.
Advisory Committee, that there are things going into the newsletters, whether anybody's reading them, how much, on, you know, what to don't put down your drains and all this, and I don't know what we're going to do with the recycling issue, except I think citizens are going to have to start demanding packaging being done different or no packaging at all. But the main reason I was going to talk was to say we're in favor of the textile recycling. It sounds like it's something that would be of no cost to the township, and it's something to try. And if it would be a service offered to people in the community as an easy way to remove unwanted textiles and small home appliances, I believe is what goes with that and that.
Yeah, and it's
I think
preferable
it's,
to the dumpsters. We've seen in many communities these yellow or green dumpsters,
Yeah.
and those things are unsightly, and they
Yeah.
attract trash and
Everything else.
vandalism and whatnot. And so I'd prefer something that's more of a voluntary curbside process
Yeah,
than
I just think that's a good idea. And it'll let me clean out a few things too that I don't know what to do with that I just can't see dumping in a landfill. Because you know there's a way to repurpose it. You just don't know how to get it somewhere.
Sure.
So anyway, so those are just my comments about
Okay.
the planning. So thank you.
All right, thanks. Anyone else? Okay, thank you. We'll meet again next Tuesday for a real board meeting, and I need a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Supervisor, I
Mr.
move we
Heitman
adjourn at
motions to
9:40.
adjourn at 9:40. Is there a second? Second by Clerk Borba. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Thanks.